you. All right, welcome to the Assembly Committee on Education. Will the Secretary please call roll?
Assemblywoman Duran.
Here.
Assemblyman Flores.
Present.
Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hanson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblywoman Krasner.
Here.
Assemblywoman Marzola.
Here.
Assemblyman MacArthur.
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Nguyen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Tolles.
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
Here, and we have all members present, so we have a quorum. Welcome to those of you viewing our meeting online or through the YouTube channel, and for those participating by phone or video. Just a few housekeeping things that I'd like to remind. If you have a microphone on, please mute yourself when you're not speaking so we can minimize background noise. Committee members, please make sure to keep your cameras on for the duration of the meeting to ensure a quorum is present. We do expect courtesy and respect in this committee. We don't always agree on policy, but we need to be respectful to each other in the legislative process. For folks, you can find all the meeting materials on our committee's webpage on Nellis. And for those of you watching online in this virtual world, most of us have several screens that we're looking at. So if you see members looking away, they're likely looking at materials for the committee, and don't take it as a sign of disrespect. We have 5 bills to hear in a work session this afternoon. We are going to do the work session first. Please note we are pulling AB 195 from the work session today, and you should have got that note earlier in the day. For our bill hearings, we are going to hear them in the following order: AB 254, AB 255, AB 206, AB 257, and AB 367. So the work session, if you have those documents ready, we'll start with AB 67, AB 109, and AB 194 in that order. So at this time, I will open the work session and start with AB 67. I'll turn it over to Ms. Robusto.
Thank you, Chair Bilbray Axelrod. For the record, Christy Robusto, Research Division, Legislative Counsel Bureau. As your nonpartisan staff, I'm not here to advocate for issues. I'm here to assist members with the policy issues brought forward to this committee. Our first bill on work session today is Assembly Bill 67, sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Education on behalf of Nevada's Department of Education and heard by the committee on March 23rd. Assembly Bill 67 revises provisions relating to suspension, expulsion, and permanent expulsion of a pupil from public school, charter school, or university school for the profoundly gifted by defining suspend, expel, and permanently expel, revising circumstances in which a pupil may undergo those disciplinary actions, authorizing a pupil with a disability to undergo those disciplinary actions in certain circumstances, provides that that hearings and proceedings related to such actions are not subject to Nevada's open meeting law, and allows the Board of Trustees of the school district to appoint a designee. It also determines when a pupil should be deemed a habitual disciplinary problem. There is one proposed amendment to this measure submitted by Sarah Nick on behalf of the Nevada Department of Education. The amendment provides that hearings and proceedings are not subject to Nevada's open meeting law. It authorizes a designee of a governing body of a charter school or university school for the profoundly gifted. It amends the definition of suspend or suspension by removing that it be for at least 1 day and instead providing that it be for up to 1 semester. And it provides other clarifying language. The amendment is on the next page for the committee's review. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robusto. Before we take a motion, are there questions on the bill? Okay, I am not seeing any, so I will take a motion to amend and do pass AB 67.
Moved.
Assemblywoman.
Second. We're so moved.
Assemblywoman Gorlow has made the motion to amend and do pass. Assemblywoman Tolles has seconded. Okay, Tolles, oh, sorry about that. Are there any comments on the motion before we vote?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to say thank you to those who worked on this and brought this forward. I think I know it was important clarifications that were needed, and I'm enthusiastically support.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll call vote?
Assemblywoman Duran,
Yes.
Assemblyman Flores,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Gorlow,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hanson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
Assemblyman MacArthur,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Miller,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Nguyen,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Torres,
Yes.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
Yes, and the motion passes unanimously. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Nguyen. Okay, our next work session, I'll open the work session on AB 109, and I will turn it over to you, Ms. Robusto.
Thank you, Chair. Assembly Bill 109 was sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Education on behalf of the Interim Legislative Committee on Education and heard by the committee on March 11th. The bill requires that all teachers who provide instruction at a charter school be licensed to teach in Nevada, and provides that a teacher employed at a charter school on or before July 1st, 2021, who does not have a license to teach may continue teaching at the charter school without a license until July 1st, 2026. There is an amendment. It was proposed by Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod. The amendment does the following. It revives and amends subsection 1 of section 1 of the bill of NRS 388A 518. What this does is increase the percentage of teachers who would provide instruction at a charter school who must hold a license or endorsement to teach issued pursuant to Chapter 391 from 70% to 80%, and ensures the business and industry endorsement and allowances are retained. The amendment also requires persons who are not required to hold the license or endorsement to A, hold a degree, license, or certificate in the field, and B, have at least 2 years of experience in the field. It also requires that a teacher must hold a license to teach issues pursuant to Chapter 391 for any core academic subjects. It requires that a teacher at a charter school teaching English as a second language in special education be licensed pursuant to NRS 388-518. It keeps the removal of subject matter expertise. It keeps the removal of subsection 6 and 7 regarding differentiating non-licensed teacher qualifications based on the performance of a charter school, and amends section 9 to provide coverage of the grace period and conforming changes to fix the gaps that were in the original legislation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Robusto. Before we take a motion, are there any questions on Bill AB 109? Assemblywoman Hanson?
Thank you, Chair. I think I had it answered, and appreciate the amendment that you brought forward. So just to clarify, BNI is being retained.
That is correct.
And also the July 1, 2026 date will be for any unlicensed teachers now to have that time period to catch up.
I believe that date did retain, so if any, between that 70% that was formally to the 80%. Is that correct, Ms. Robusto?
Christy Robusto, for the record, that is correct. And we also have Amanda Marinsik, our legal counsel, on as well, if there are any questions.
Okay, I think that with
I
that.
forgot we have Amanda on. We haven't seen her in so long. So welcome, Amanda. Does that answer your question, Assemblywoman Hanson?
It does. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? I am not seeing any. Okay, so with that, I will take a motion to amend and do pass. AB 109.
I'd so move to amend and do pass.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman Lynn.
Wynn has made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Assemblywoman Hanson. Are there any comments on the motion before we vote? I just want to thank everyone quickly for working on this. I know it's, I was actually going to make reference to you, Vice Chair, but why don't you go ahead and speak for yourself?
Thank you. I just, I have a lot of discomfort with the amendment. The intention of the bill and coming out of interim committee was to, make sure we're providing the most trained, highly qualified teachers that we can for our students across the board. And so to increase only from 70% licensed teachers to 80%, when we already see an upward trend, when the Charter School Authority said in interim that there were 36 teachers in the state, and then during the hearing said there was 39, already shows an increase. It's just, the gap and the inconsistency of expectations between our public schools and our charter schools. When we have specialized and specialist teachers and teachers teaching electives that are required to have license in the public schools teaching the same things, it's still an area of discomfort for me, but I will pass it out, I will vote to pass it out of committee. But I just think that, that this separate set of rules and inconsistencies continue to, just hold true. And so I'm not comfortable with the amendment, but I will vote for it to pass out of committee.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And I'll just sort of continue with what my comments I was making. I think that I think the amendment is good, and I totally respect your opinion, but I do think that there needs to be some flexibility with charters, and that's sort of the idea of them. And so for these very specialized things, but I appreciate you, and I appreciate everyone else on the committee for talking it over with me to get to a place of yes for most people. So with that, we will perform a roll call vote. Madam Secretary.
Assemblywoman Duran,
Yes.
Yes.
Assemblyman Flores,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Gorlow,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hanson,
Yes?
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
Assemblyman MacArthur,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Miller,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Nguyen,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Torres,
Yes.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
Yes, and the motion passes. And I'm actually going to take that floor statement myself. So now we will move on to Assembly Bill 194. So I'll open up that work session and turn it over to Ms. Robusto.
Thank you, Chair. The work session on Assembly Bill 194, which was sponsored by Assemblywoman Torres and heard by the committee on March 23rd. The bill requires the Board of Trustees of each school district and the governing body of each charter school or university school for the profoundly gifted to adopt a policy for appealing the suspension or expulsion of a pupil. It specifies certain limitations and other requirements included in the policy and provides an appeal hearings, that appeal hearings are not subject to Nevada's open meeting law. It requires that policies be up on the website and that the Nevada Department of Ed provide guidance on such appeals processes. The bill also provides that unless under certain circumstances, a pupil is entitled to continue attending school under a suspension and expulsion, and it requires the annual report of accountability by each school district and district-sponsored charter school to include specific information as well. Assemblywoman Torres proposed a conceptual amendment, which does the following and was presented during the bill hearing. It amends provisions relating to the timelines and procedures for suspending or expelling a pupil in Section 5. It deletes subsections 1 to 3 of Section 6 and amends Section 7 to require NDE to consult with the Office of Safe and Respectful Learning Environment in providing guidance to school districts. An additional amendment was proposed on behalf of NDE by Assemblywoman Torres. It authorizes a designee of the Board of Trustees of a school district or governing body of the charter school to be allowed to take actions required by the Board of Trustees or governing body. And it deletes the Office for a Safe and Respectful Learning Environment from Section 7 and 8 and adds the department to Section 7. And finally, it adds an additional section regarding the plan to improve the achievement of pupils, which can be seen on the next page. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, you're muted.
I just realized that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Robusto. Before we take a motion, are there any questions on Bill 194, AB 194?
So moved. Assemblyman Flores.
Assemblyman Flores has made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Vice Chair Miller. Are there any comments on the motion before we vote? Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to take a moment of privilege to just thank our committee analyst and our committee counsel for working with me until the last minute on this amendment. I really appreciate you taking the time to make sure that we got the amendment right and got something that all of our stakeholders could be happy with. I also want to just clarify because I noticed that in our work session document, it says in part 3 of the amendment that I proposed that we're amending Section 7 to require NDE to consult with the Office of Safe and Respectful Learning Environment. And then if we look at the amendment that was accepted with NDE, we're taking that out. I just want to clarify that we'll be taking that out to remove the Office for Safe and Respectful Learning Environment and just keep the department for that section. I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record.
Thank you. And we do have our legal counsel, so if you could just give us an affirmative shake of the head, Amanda, for that. Okay. All right. We got that. And really our committee staff works tirelessly. So thank you for that. So Madam Secretary, would you please perform a roll call vote?
Assemblywoman Duran,
Yes.
Assemblyman Flores,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Gorlow,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hanson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Hardy,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Marzola,
Yes.
Assemblyman MacArthur,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Miller,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Nguyen,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Torres,
Yes.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
Yes, and the motion passes. I will assign the floor statement for Bill AB 194 to Assemblywoman Torres. I'll close this work session on the agenda and we'll now move on to our bill hearings. For bill hearings this afternoon, I have allocated equal time for testimony in support, opposition, and neutral. Each person providing testimony will be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes, and staff will time each speaker to ensure everyone is given the equal amount of time to speak. Speakers are urged to avoid repetition of comments made by previous speakers. We will limit the overall length of each testimony period to 30 minutes. If you wish to testify and have not done so already, please register on the link on the agenda. You may also submit public comment in writing. And if you do not want to testify, you still may register so there's a record of interest in your particular bill. And just so the committee knows and people watching, we are going to have a lot of bills coming in the next 2 weeks. So we are trying to have presenters limit their initial testimony to about 15 minutes. So I hate doing that right away to my boss, Speaker Ryerson, but that's just good. I figured if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, right? All right, thank you, Speaker Ryerson, and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will endeavor to be as succinct as I possibly can. Again, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Jason Frierson. I represent Assembly District 8 in Clark County, also the Speaker of the Nevada State Assembly. I thank you for your time and consideration of Assembly Bill 254 first, which addresses a number of policies regarding compensation of student athletes at the post-secondary level. With me, I hope that I have on the line Sebastian Ross, who's a student from UNLV, who I would like to have assist me with the bill presentation. I am going to, like I said, endeavor to be get through this and be mindful of everyone's time. Just a little bit of background. College athletes earn billions of dollars annually for their schools, television networks, apparel companies, and the National Collegiate Athletic Association, the NCAA. According to the NCAA, more than 460,000 college students compete in collegiate sports. College athletes are a major revenue source for many athletic programs and schools. But the question is, how does that actually benefit the athlete, him or herself? And typically it's very little. A study released last October by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that less than 7% of the revenue generated by the NC2A actually makes its way in particular to football and men's basketball players through scholarships and living stipends, those being the two largest in college athletics. A direct quote from that study: while intercollegiate sports are often described as student activities undertaken by amateurs, the economic reality is that athletic departments have developed into complex commercial enterprises that look far more like professional sports organizations. One of the most disturbing findings in the report states that the NC2A's current economic model effectively transfers resources away from students from poor neighborhoods towards students who are more likely to be from higher income neighborhoods. So, the context is a kid like me from Compton that played football at UNR is going to be participating in sports, and then some of the money that's generated from that is going to be transferred to sports that are not ones that are participated in by folks from those lower poor incomes, like swimming or water polo or things like that. Overall, the lack of fairness for college athletes has been contentious for many years, and I believe this is likely to change soon. But currently, NCAA rules are still in place that prohibit these athletes from profiting from the use of their name and likeness. That means they can't sign endorsement deals, sell autographs or memorabilia, various ways that athletes would typically be able to earn money based on their likeness. There are 3 or 4 things happening at the national level, though, that have a bearing on this. First, I want to acknowledge California took the first step with its fair pay to play law enacted in September of 2019. The law lets student athletes endorse products and use their name, sport, and school to identify themselves, but prevents them from using school logos and other trademark property in their endorsements. Now, this just started a flurry of debate about this and about the NC2A rules. So almost immediately, Colorado and Florida followed, and by the fall of last year, 33 other states have introduced related bills. In response, the NC2A has raised concerns about having to deal with the patchwork of state laws, and they've asked for Congress to adopt federal legislation addressing the matter. So Congress has taken this matter up, and there's a College Athletes Bill of Rights, which the sponsors say will guarantee fair and equitable compensation, enforcement of health and safety standards, various things to help the athlete that's earning this revenue for their institutions. I believe that this will likely be reintroduced and early in the 117th Congress, and if it becomes law, will transform economics of college sports. Of course, after that, the NC2A itself has taken action. In April of last year, the NC2A announced that it supports rule changes in this regard, and would prefer that any such deals for these athletes come from a third party. And in that way, college and universities would not be allowed to pay those athletes, but it will be a third party. NC2A's rules are not expected to formally take effect immediately. So we're wanting to act to get ready. There are also a couple of cases before the Supreme Court that are going to consider whether these limitations are anti-competitive restraints of trade in violation of antitrust laws. So I kind of give all of that as background. AB 254 also requires a study to look at these matters. And I want to say, and I'm going to go through the provisions of the bill now. This bill is intended to get out of the way so that when Congress and the NC2A do act, Nevada's ready. And so that is something that we have worked on and discussed with our institutions here in Nevada. And now I walk through the bill itself. AB 254 has three major components. First, Section 5 provides that the post-secondary institutions or the NCAA may not prevent an athlete from being compensated for the use of their name, again, so that we are ready when Congress and the NC2A act. And it also may not compensate students directly. The section also prohibits any related impact on student athletes' scholarship, prohibits the NC2A from disallowing students to participate. Again, this is all designed to just get out of the way for what I believe is inevitable. The second portion in Section 6, first, a student athlete is authorized to enter into a contract with an organization that provides for compensation, and that organization may not be the institution nor the NC2A. Second, the contract itself may not conflict with the contract that the student athlete has with the institution. And third, the contract must be disclosed to the institution and a procedure specified when there's a conflict between the contracts. Lastly, Section 8 of the bill requires the Legislative Committee on Education to appoint a committee to study this issue over next interim, with the hope, again, that we're going to see what the NC2A does, what Congress does, and be ready to make sure that our athletes are taken care of. I am aware and have discussed this with UNR and UNLV. I know that there is a amendment that was circulated that I consider to be friendly. This is, again, an effort now that the NC2A is ready to act to make sure that we're ready to take care of these athletes. I'll say from personal experience that I'm proud to have participated in intercollegiate sports at UNR, but I also had 4 knee surgeries and 1 shoulder surgery afterwards. And I look at that stadium and I realize that we helped pay for that. We helped build that stadium, but just like me, there are other athletes that have lingering issues with respect to their participation. And if they are able to have a contract for the use of their likeness, I think that it's only fair. And so with that concludes my presentation. I tried to cut out as much as I could, Madam Chair. I don't know if Sebastian is here, but I would certainly welcome any questions.
Sebastian is on. I saw him. So did you want to go ahead and have Sebastian speak first?
Sure, Madam Chair. If it is within the allotted time, I want to set the standard and follow the rules.
Yes, you have a few more minutes, so go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Speaker Frierson, and Madam Chair, I'm going to go ahead and defer to my colleague, Karina.
Smart man.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Karina Armstrong, and I'm a former Division I athlete. I was able to be a collegiate athlete at both a Mountain West and an Atlantic Coast Conference school. And so this kind of just gave me good insight and experience just about how much money is actually generated through college athletics. And no one sees the hard work that is put in on behind the scenes. They just kind of see the glory that goes to collegiate athletes. And that's just why Sebastian and myself were really passionate about this bill, because we feel that athletes do definitely deserve to be compensated for their hard work as well as their name, image, and likeness. Specifically, I think when people look at this bill, they think of men's basketball and football, which obviously are the money generating sports of college athletics. But for me, when I look at this bill, I see an opportunity for athletes such as I was a track and field athlete. So I see this as an opportunity for track and field athletes, softball, tennis, gymnastics, swim and dive, where those professional opportunities don't necessarily allot them as much as they do for men's basketball and football. And so if men's basketball and football players are allowed to earn money at their peak of their sports, so should these other athletes, regardless of when this peak takes place. And some of these peaks take place in college. And lastly, I just think it's really important to note that this bill not only allows the compensation for name, image, and likeness, but it also allows athletes to profit off their talent as collegiate athletes. So this means that they'll now be able to be compensated for lessons or camps that they host. And I think that's important to look at because on the outside looking in, obviously student athletes are looked at, it's like you're getting your school getting paid for and you're getting a stipend. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is there's equivalency sports in college athletics, which is what I specifically was in, which is track and field, which means you don't get all or nothing. It's not 100% full ride. You can get 30% of tuition. And so this would allow, say, someone in track and field like me to host a throwing camp or have throwing lessons, and I could get compensated for those lessons or those camps by parents. And there's a lot of people who I think they see a lot of money that is going to these athletes. And while that is completely true and honest, I think that people also need to realize, as being an athlete, that I saw a lot of my teammates sending money back home to their families who were in need, and they come from lower income areas. And so this would also allow them to be able to make money in the summer or whenever they're on their off season, which would hopefully help them sustain so they can participate and do the 40 plus hours of what entails from their college athletic program, as well as go to school full time. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you again, Madam Chair, and the members of the committee for allowing me to speak today. And now I'll turn it over to my partner, Sebastian Ross.
Mr. Ross, you have about 1 minute.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Sebastian Ross. I'm a student at the UNLV William S. Boyd School of Law. My colleague Karina and I were presented an opportunity during our first year of school to participate in a legislation-based competition. And given the hours that she alluded to that were spent during our athletic careers, crafting legislation geared towards student-athlete equity made sense to us. And although my Division III athletic experience differs from the Division I experience of my fellow co-presenters, my brief playing stint enlightened me about the business principles regarding institutional profit at the collegiate level. Another imperative lesson I learned came from my teammates. Your teammates become your family, and I vividly remember seeing my brother struggle financially. Not only was ordering off the dollar menu at McDonald's the norm, but a means of survival for some of us. Upgrading from the dollar menu to a Big Mac was indulging upon a delicacy. This happened simultaneously as the university we played at expanded athletic facilities, all while collecting consistently inflating tuition from inner city youth. In candor, there are very few examples of my brothers having the same linear financial gain that parallels the financial growth of our old institution. A number of them are in the same dire situation upon which they entered school. I'm fortunate with an opportunity in furthering my education. A number of my brothers do not share the same fortune. However, one thing many, if not all of us share, is waking up with various physical ailments as the result of our physical sacrifice. Again, my brothers and I signed up for the D3 pay-to-play model. We assumed the risk for our sacrifice. Unfortunately, a number of us questioned the reward that came with the risk. There's no doubt in my mind that hosting a camp or promoting a local business through social media and receiving pay would have made the notion of financial comfort more plausible, at least back then. This bill potentially benefits the quality of life for athletes, contributing to the economic development of Nevada. And historically, our great state has built a reputation of empowering residents and their success in the economic marketplace based on libertarian values. Adoption of this bill gives athletes the opportunity to enter the marketplace, enabling one to find her or his own value. And for some athletes, this might be the only time in their life where they have an opportunity to make money from their athletic ability. So in conclusion, I alluded to the work my colleague Karina and I put in preparation for a school competition. I want to thank Assembly members Wynn and Hardy, who sit on this committee, for sharing their time as judges and providing feedback. Thank you, Speaker Frierson, for advocating on behalf of the demographic of Nevadans facing inequity. Thank you to the LCB staff, and thank you, Chair and members of this committee, for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I know we do have a few questions from the committee. I just wanted to thank Ms. Armstrong for speaking about the giving lessons, because that was something I hadn't really thought of. I was thinking more likeness, you know, we can anticipate a windfall of money coming in from Speaker in his days playing in UNR. So we're very excited about that. But thank you for bringing that up. I did have a really quick question to you, Speaker. You mentioned California's fair pay to play law, and it has a prohibition of use of mascots and university logos. That's not included in this bill. Is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not expressly included in this bill. Again, for the record, Jason Frierson, it's not expressly included in this bill, but what is included in the bill is directing the institutions to develop policies. And so that would be, and I believe that that's part of the conversation I had with UNLV in particular, that would be part of the policies that they would develop.
Thank you for that clarification. I know we have at least two questions. I will start with Assemblywoman Wynn.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Wynn, for the record. It's great to see you, Speaker, as well, but more importantly, Mr. Ross and Ms. Armstrong. I had the privilege of being one of the judges on the Policy and Legislation Society competition. So I saw this, and I'm so glad to see you guys here today. I guess my question is do we have an idea of how the compensation would work? Like, for example, if Speaker Frierson had like jerseys that were branded with his name and they would do it, how would that compensation model work? Or would they have to negotiate for it?
This is Jason Frierson, for the record. I will say this. I believe all of that would be contained within the rules promulgated by Congress, by the NC2A, and by the institution. I think that not only would it be specific to a state and an institution, but a sport as well. So I believe that is why they would need to have an agent. And I believe the UNLV has provided language regarding the requirement that it'd be a licensed agent, and that they have those terms in the contracts. I think that the details of exactly how it's going to work are going to be largely dictated by Congress and by the NC2A. California did a yeoman's job of starting this conversation, and when I will admit, when I first set out to do this, I was a bit overwhelmed. And quite frankly, it was because of Sebastian and Karina that I decided to keep it moving and to move forward after recognizing they had done a tremendous amount of work in researching this as well. But I do believe it will largely be dictated by Congress and the NC2A, and ultimately what comes out of those policies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. And I actually had an opportunity to judge this year's semifinals this last weekend. So what a great opportunity for these young students, and the bills were great this year, and obviously this one is as well. I will next go to Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Chair Billy Axelrod. And I too just want to take a minute first to say how thrilled I am to see Mr. Ross and Ms. Armstrong here, and to have the Speaker pick up this bill. Was honored to be a part of this competition, the first competition of the Policy and Legislation Society. And I was so impressed with both of them, and it's just so great to see. When I saw this bill today, I was just cheering to be able to have you present this bill. So I just had two questions. You mentioned UNR and UNLV. Is it limited to just those type of institutions, or could it be for athletes at CSN and other colleges such as those?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Hart. Again, for the record, Jason Frierson. I mentioned UNR, UNLV as the two institutions that we. My watch decided to listen to me. But the bill doesn't specify those, and so this is, would be a state policy regarding any collegiate athletics in Nevada.
Thank you. And then also, is it limited to like Division I sports, or can it be any level?
Thank you again, Jason Frierson. It would not be limited to Division I, as Mr. Ross indicated. He participated in a Division III sport. Look, when I started at UNR, it was Division I, and so at the end of the day, it is the examples like Ms. Armstrong said of being able to give lessons or have events. But the glaring example is when the NC2A has a video game with your number and it looks like you and it has your stats and your size, and you're not being able to contract to be compensated for that. So that would be throughout all of the divisions.
Thank you. I think this is a great idea, and like was mentioned, not all athletes get full ride scholarships, and so this is just a way for them to have extra money, support their families and such. And so I'm really excited that this bill is here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. And I think we had a question from Vice Chair Miller.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Speaker Frierson, for bringing this bill forward. I think you can tell the enthusiasm in the room, all of us sports fans, and appreciation of college athletes. My question, and just so you know, in my mind, this bill is AB Fab 5. So I take it back to not just that experience, but also my question when it comes to compensation is I remember when I was younger, and of course I'm going to give up my age and my location, there was a Detroit Lion, Mike Utley, who in the middle of like his second or third season was actually paralyzed on the field in the middle of the game. And I remember the discussions about, well, don't worry, the NFL, he'll have insurance and long-term disability, and NFL has pensions and all this kind of stuff. As you mentioned, your own surgeries coming from college sports, has there been any discussion or conversation, even if on the national level, congressional level, about medical insurance, long-term disabilities, those types of compensations to take care of our college athletes?
Thank you again for the record, Jason Frierson. I know I am aware that those conversations are taking place. My own personal experience was such that I became acutely aware that my injuries would plague me long beyond the window of time that I was at university. So I think that's all part of this conversation. I think it will open up. And again, as I stated at the outset, I think it's gonna really have a significant impact on college sports and competitions that, quite frankly, need to take place.
Yes. Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think with that, we will go on and move on to testimony and its support, opposition, and neutral. When we call your name or call your last 3 digits, make sure to state your name and spell it clearly, and you'll have 2 minutes. Broadcast services, you can go ahead. We'll open it for support.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 254, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 398, please state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Bilbray Axelrod and members of the Assembly Education Committee. My name is Sabra Newby, SABRANEWBY, representing the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I want to thank Speaker Frierson and all of the co-sponsors for bringing this legislation forward in an effort to better support our student athletes. We similarly want to ensure that our student athletes are prepared for this changing landscape in collegiate sports. To that end, we have collaborated with UNR on some conceptual amendments on which we also gained approval from Speaker Frierson as a friendly amendment. Those conceptual amendments are loaded into the Nellis system, but I will go over them briefly. First, an institution may promulgate reasonable policy limiting contracts with businesses or individuals whose goods or services are contrary to the intent of the educational mission of the institution or the National Collegiate Athletic Association. Secondly, an institution may require the student athlete to receive education regarding contracts, financial literacy, and other subjects to prepare the student athlete. Third, prospective student athletes must disclose all current and expired name, image, likeness contracts to their respective institutions before signing a letter of intent. Number 4, that agents must be certified. And finally, that we adjust the effective date to January 1, 2022 to allow for federal legislation and NC2A processes to transpire. Again, I applaud Speaker Frierson and the other co-sponsors for bringing this legislation forward. We think it's an important step in both aiding our student athletes and protecting their interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newby. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 929, please press *6 now to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Ryan Mitchell, Senior Associate AD for Education Services at the University of Nevada. I apologize, a little under the weather. Son started daycare this month, and I'm feeling the pain. So thank you for your time. First off, I'd love to thank the Assembly and Speaker Frierson for consideration of this bill. Very important issue. And I would put forth that the University of Nevada, Reno supports the bill and the recommended amendments put forth by the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. In addition, we support the student athlete ability to exercise their NIL rights and appreciate this Assembly's efforts to consider those. Any other considerations we would support as well. So again, thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I hope you feel better soon. Next caller in support.
To anyone who has just joined, we are currently testifying in support on Assembly Bill 254. Please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time the line is open and working, but there are no more callers to testify in support on Assembly Bill 254.
Okay, I will close the testimony for support and move to testimony in opposition. Please queue up the first caller.
To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 254, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, if you wish to give testimony in opposition on Assembly Bill 254, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Anyone who has just joined to give opposition to Assembly Bill 254, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, the light is open and working. However, there are no callers in opposition on Assembly Bill 254.
Thank you. I will close testimony in opposition and open testimony in neutral for AB 254.
Testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 254. Please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 254, please press *9 now. Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time to give testimony in neutral on Assembly Bill 254.
Thank you very much. And Speaker Frierson, did you have any closing remarks?
No, Madam Chair, I thank you for your all's time and attention, for the collaboration with UNR and UNLV, and certainly for the help and encouragement of Mr. Ross and Ms. Armstrong. This absolutely would not be here but for them.
Thank you very much. And I do have to point out, I love that our two Assemblywomen from the North are both wearing their rebel red today. So thanks, guys. With that, I will close the hearing on AB 254, and I will open the hearing on AB 255. Speaker Frierson, begin when you're ready.
There we go. Thank you again. I appreciate the enthusiasm and for the last bill, and I expect this bill to be a little bit more juicy. I am pleased to introduce to the committee Assembly Bill 255. Again, for the record, Jason Frierson, representing Assembly District 8, Speaker of the Nevada State Assembly. Assembly Bill 255 revises how members of the Board of Trustees of certain school districts are selected. So it would be a hybrid of both elected and appointed members of the board. A little bit of background. In a 2019 report of key characteristics of effective school boards, the Center for Public Education concluded, based on the studies, it is clear that school boards in high-achieving school districts hold a high shared vision about the capabilities of both students and staff. They are policy and accountability driven, focusing their time and energy on governance level actions related to student achievement and classroom instruction. They engage in goal-setting processes that can drive action in the district to improve. They align resources, including staff, professional development, around those goals. They're data savvy, using data to both diagnose problems and to monitor and drive continuous improvement efforts. They communicate with and engage staff and community and work well together as a team and in collaborative leadership with their superintendents. And they commit to their own learning, building the knowledge and skills it takes to govern during a period of educational reform. That report and additional research also consistently demonstrate that highly effective school boards ensure commitment to and focus on issues related to improving student achievement. However, through the observing school board meetings across the state in 2018, 2019, the Gwynn Center found that on average, Nevada school boards spent little time, less than 20% of their time focusing on student achievements or their outcomes. There's ongoing debate about how best to structure school boards to best support student outcomes. Advocates for elected school boards highlight the benefits of local democratic political participation and agency, as well as accountability to voters for school operations. In contrast, critics of elected school boards often highlight low voter turnout rates, the impact of special interest groups, and general politicization of school governance as shortcomings. Research comparing elected school boards to appointed school boards, however, is limited. Some states currently allow appointed school boards in specific districts. There are multiple ways a school board can be appointed. Many use a mayoral appointment and require a commission to provide a recommended list to the mayor to choose from. Examples of appointed school boards in large urban districts include Boston, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Chicago, Cleveland, New York City, and Philadelphia. Of note, Baltimore County School Board is comprised of 7 elected members and 4 appointed members with assistance from a nominating commission. I know there's concern that this bill limits democracy and takes away someone's voting rights to elect their school board. I'll just note that this bill came to fruition and proposes a hybrid school board model, with the majority of the board still being elected and other elected individuals in charge of the outlined appointments. And this is for 3 reasons. Number one, stakeholders want to find the best way to ensure Nevada's larger school board of trustees are effective at supporting student achievement and student outcome. The research shows highly effective school boards are associated with increased student achievement, and Nevada school board, again, as observed from 2018 and 2019, at least spent about or less than 20% of their time focusing on that. I just believe that we have to figure out a way to do better. Number two, appointing school members, adding appointed school board members is a way to professionalize the boards and enhance them with a different level of expertise than is currently on the board. That's another key component to highly effective boards. And third, I want to ensure that the majority was still elected by the voters. I want to say this, I am not wedded to any particular approach. I know that there are some that have opinions about different ways to modify. I also know that there's some opposition with some other ideas about accountability and codes of conduct. But, you know, in a state where we have one of the largest school districts in the country, we can't afford to have some of the distractions and dysfunction that we have in years past. I do want to, before I go through the sections of the bill, though, thank the school board members throughout our state. This is not intended, and I realize that it could be received this way. I thank every single board member for their service, for their willingness to serve, and for their interest in helping our kids in our schools. This is not intended to be an attack on them, but we have work to do to improve the quality of our school system in Nevada, and you know, coming up with a way to expand accountability, not take away accountability, is the goal. So as I go through the sections of the bill, allowing a county entity, you know, county commission and city councils in the larger cities to you know, make these appointments, in my opinion, increases accountability, because those bodies are elected and they're expected to make sure that their appointments are qualified, have experience, is valuable to the board, and reflect the community. I will also say that in some of the research and documents that we've you know, found on this issue, it is reflected that appointed school boards or hybrid school boards are much more likely to reflect the demographics of the community. You know, elections are expensive, and the school boards across the country are just much less likely to reflect that diversity when they're entirely elected. So as I go through the sections of the bill, Section 1, Subsection 2 of this bill revises the electoral process for electing members of the Board of Trustees of a county over 75,000, that's Clark County. It requires the Board of Trustees be composed of 7 members, which is currently the case, 4 of whom would be elected, and 1 appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and then 2 appointed by the largest cities. Section 1, Subsection 2 of the bill similarly revises the process for electing board members with county school districts more than 25,000 and less than 75,000 pupils, and that's Washoe County, and requires the school board of trustees be composed of, again, 7 members with the same division as the subsection 1. Section 1, subsection 3 requires the Board of County Commissioners to establish election districts that are nearly as equal in population and as practicable as possible, composed of contiguous territory. Section 5, subsection 2 provides that any vacancy of an appointed board of trustee members must be filed by the appointing authority, and the remaining sections make conforming changes. Madam Chair, members of the committee, again, the goal of this bill is to diversify and enrich our existing school board members to ensure that the folks that are making the decisions that impact our children's education have expanded accountability by virtue of the appointing bodies, but that we are able to professionalize it to make sure when we're talking about huge budgets, when we're talking about the development of curriculum, when we are talking about, you know, the system that our children are involved in for a majority of their day, that these folks have experiences that would enrich those bodies. And so the majority would still be elected. And this is intended to enhance the effectiveness of those school boards to try to better support our students. And that is my presentation. Again, I thank you all for your time and consideration. I urge support of this bill. happy to take questions, recognizing there are tons of folks that have some proposed amendments that I am certainly open to, and open to whatever direction the majority of this committee would like to go.
Thank you, Speaker, for your testimony. And I'm not seeing any questions on chat yet, but I'm looking at everyone. So if you want to raise your hand, I see Assemblywoman Hanson has a question. Okay, we will start with you, Assemblywoman Hanson. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I keep getting these weird messages when I unmute. So thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, to have a chance to speak with you. I have 7 school districts. I have 7 counties in my district. Washoe would be the one that would be affected by this, if I understand it right, correct? It's 25,000 pupils up to 75. Under 25,000, this wouldn't apply to them?
That's correct, Assemblywoman.
Okay. Having been involved in a lot of school district policy as a parent for years, my kids are grown now, so I date myself. I was highly involved in the late 80s, all through the 90s. And so I have a couple things to say, and then I think I have one more question to clarify. I found that dealing with the school boards, as I attended meetings numerous times and was involved, that more times than not, to the frustration of us parents sometimes, the school board would take the recommendation of the administration. And so I'm not connecting the dots about when school boards in the model that they're in aren't maybe getting to the outcomes we want. They're taking the recommendations a lot of times of the experts, even though a lot of board members are lay people. And then the current, you referenced like 2018, I think, and such. Washoe County, their school board really was distracted having to handle a lot of controversy surrounding 2 superintendents in a row. So if they weren't able, and believe me, I've been a critic of the Washoe County School Board in the past, but in a way, I'm coming to their defense here, that they have been dealing, unfortunately, out of their purview of responsibility. I mean, not their fault, that they've had to deal with some of the controversies surrounding the unfortunate superintendent issues we had in the past in the last 10 years. So I'm not real comfortable with this, just because I do like the idea that school board members are, like we are, representatives of their constituents, the needs of parents and students. They rely on the administration, much like here at the legislature, we rely on, the State Board of Education. So I think I mainly had comments more than questions, but thank you for clarifying for my districts that are under 25,000, this would not apply to them.
That's correct. I mean, I'll respond if you would like. Again, for the record, Jason Frierson. Everyone is certainly entitled to their opinion about whether or not school board should be elected or appointed, and they're all valid. Nobody is villainizing the school board for their willingness to serve, but I think that the very issues that you pointed to speak to the value of having some be appointed. They may have been distracted by some superintendent issues, but that's their job. Their job is to manage those things. And so again, as I stated earlier, in discussing this bill, we all have our opinions about which position should be elected versus not. But I think that school boards are just as important as picking a doctor, and you don't elect your doctor. And so, because they have important decisions, whether it's HR, whether it's development of curriculum, whether it's budgets, whether it's ethics. I think these are all reasons why we need to find a way to make sure that we have a richer experience moving forward. And I think that this is one way to attempt to do that. There may be other ways. This may not be the way, but I believe that by having other elected officials, and typically higher profile races where there's higher turnout, we increase accountability as well.
For the opportunity to have the discussion.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Speaker, for bringing this bill and having this discussion. You know, we're receiving all kinds of opinions and everything, and so it's good to be able to talk about this. So I was just reading through the bill, and so I was just wondering if you could go over, and this might be in Section 8, but how you see this being rolled out, like the 4 that are going to be elected, how is that decided, which districts are elected and which ones are appointed? So if maybe you could go through that a little bit.
Sure. Thank you, Assemblywoman Harding, and for Jason Frierson. I think, at least in theory, the positions that would be appointed would occur as the positions open. The timing is interesting because with likely redistricting sometime later this year, there will be an ability to draw new boundaries, and I think the timing would coincide perfectly. So you're right. I believe Section 8 sets out that the between October of next year and December, the appointing authorities would appoint members of the board. Well, actually, for both sides counties, as those positions were vacated. And because people would be running for the new positions, the boundaries would be drawn based on the new boundaries once we do redistricting, presumably later this year. And so that would dictate who would be able and eligible to run for those particular seats versus who would be able to apply for an appointment.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And so just so I'm trying to clarify this in my own mind. So if a seat is a seat that's elected, would that seat always stay elected?
Again, for the record, Jason Frierson, no. I mean, mathematically, that's not possible. There are currently 7 elected seats in 7 districts. This bill proposes to adjust that to 4 elected. So if you took all of the school board seats that are currently in a county and they are currently divided by 7, those seats would now be divided by 4. And for every existing seat, I believe the way that it will work based on Section 8 is the first 3 that would complete their term would then be replaced by the appointing authorities. And then the remaining 4 would be able to run based on the new boundaries.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, I think we have a question from Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Speaker, for the presentation. I appreciate the intent of this legislation because I do believe that that it is important for us to open up the dialogue about what type of reform we could make to school boards in our larger school districts here in Nevada. And I in no way think that we have developed the perfect system here in Nevada, so I'm open to continuing this conversation of how we do that. And I guess I just wanted to highlight, if we thought that part of the issue though is with our school boards as is was perhaps like the significant part-time nature of it. I just can't help but think about how the legislative body functions during the interim and how challenging it is for us to make those quick decisions and be able to manage our full-time jobs and families in addition to whatever other commitments we have. And if that was a part of the dialogue, was just whether or not that significantly part-time nature of it and like the lack of resources that our school boards have was part of the issue with our current system.
Well, I can only say, and this has been a very long time ago that I attended a school board meeting, whether those people are appointed or elected doesn't change the factor that you just laid out. So if we are not going to make school board members full-time jobs, if we are not going to make them compensated beyond the limited amount that they currently are, we still have a body that's making decisions that impact our kids. And I am setting out to try to make sure that the body that's making those decisions has membership that reflects the diversity of issues that they need to make decisions about. And so for the lay folks that are on the body, on the board, I believe they would benefit from having members appointed by the counties and cities that bring expertise that would help them. I believe that, earlier there was a question about how the school boards typically just follow the administration. It's not how it should work. If that's practically how it works, that's not how it should work. We should have school board members that are making decisions based on, the information that's being provided to them and communication with their communities and what the communities think, and the experts that they might engage with think are the best moves forward. It shouldn't just be deferring. I don't know why we would have a board if all they did was defer. And so this is not, again, my goal is to help the board have a composition that best serves our kids. This is an option, and it's not the only option. And I know there are going to be some folks that have provided some proposed amendments or alternatives. I am certainly willing to go where a majority of this committee would like to go. And I think that what is going to come out of this bill is going to be better either way.
Thank you, Speaker. And just a quick comment, and I would love to see that, if we're going to continue to move forward with the dialogue of appointed representation, that they have some type of experience working in education with kids. That's not a requirement of the school board right now. But as you said, if we're going to have going to choose a surgeon, we want a surgeon who has experience. And I think, having individuals on our school board that have worked in a classroom with our kids would be a great asset.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. I agree. I had legislation in the past that increased requirements for training for school board members, and there was a great deal of resistance even then. Although I was like, if you're going to be handling huge budgets, yeah, maybe you should get some budget training. So I agree, but I don't think that the board should be exclusively folks with that type of experience, because there's also budget, there's also curriculum, there's also administration, social workers, school police. I think there's tons of different aspects of policy that the school boards have to deal with. And again, the hope is to make sure that board is best equipped to serve the students that they make these policies for.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, and I know we have a lot of folks on the line. So we are going to go ahead and move into the phone call testimony. So we will start in support of AB 255. Broadcasting whenever you're ready.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 255, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 023, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, Chairwoman Bilbray Axelrod and committee members. My name is Brenda Pearson, BRENDA PEARSON, and I'm here for the Clark County Education Association, and I'm speaking and reading testimony on behalf of a member named Jennifer Seitz. My name is Jennifer Seitz, and I'm writing to you to urge your support of Assembly Bill 255. I relocated to Nevada from Ohio in 2004 and have been teaching at the middle school level for 17 years. I have been very fortunate to teach at a highly effective school where I feel supported and appreciated. I'm embarrassed to say that may have been the reason why I never really paid attention to the CCSD school board meetings. I've been in a happy place and just didn't take the time to get involved. That changed when we had a snow day and the school board was going to vote on what day to reschedule our missing school day. I decided to tune in to see what the plan was because I had to travel plans and I wanted to see if there was a decision that would impact me. Wow, that was hard to watch. As an educator, I have to prepare and plan for every class every day. I was shocked that our elected officials appeared to have done little to prepare for their decision that evening. They seemed to be winging it, and it was upsetting. In hindsight, that was only the tip of the iceberg. Since that meeting, I've watched most and tried to stay up to date on current decisions that are determined by the trustees. The COVID pandemic really highlighted the importance of having qualified, competent trustees. While I support the last group of trustees maintaining health and safety at their as their number one priority, I didn't have confidence that their understanding of issues at the school board level or the school building level. This is mainly because I contacted them and had written correspondence with several of them. On more than one occasion, I felt like I was telling them something that they hadn't known. To me, that's scary, that elected officials in those positions wouldn't know things that are common knowledge to every school. The lack of understanding and preparation was maddening. I've also tried to get more informed about the different trustees and trustee candidates as they move into the elections. This is why I fully support Assembly Bill 255. The majority of the voting public didn't seem to know who they were voting for, and they did not vote at all. While I fully believe that in the election process, the problem is that too many voters pay little attention to down ballot candidates. That's basically where we're at in Nevada. Our board of trustees are elected by many uninformed voters that choose to by familiar names or guess. That's scary in my opinion. It's time to try something different. If we continue down the path of the status quo, we'll continue to get the same results. I support AB 255 because it's time for change. We can't leave such critical decision-making positions fully up to the voters that don't have a vested interest. We have plenty of room to grow as a district, but in order to do so, we need to do something different. I urge your support to AB 255.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. And I know you were reading a letter from someone. So if you could submit that, and we'll make sure that it goes on Nellis as well in support. So thank you for the call. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 528. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Education Committee. Liz McMenamin, MacMenamin, representing Retail Association in Nevada. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on Assembly Bill 255. Nevada places a lot of responsibility on our local school boards. They are allocated more tax dollars than any other political subdivisions of the state. The health of our economy, the diversity of our state, and our future opportunities will rely on how well prepared our students are to enter our community as fully educated adults who contribute to our society. The larger school boards continually fall short of meeting the education goals set out by this legislature. There are many factors that can be identified as to why that may be, and good work is being done and will continue to be done. But the reality is there are students we are failing to help succeed. Leadership begins at the top. Having qualified trustees with unique skill sets and experience can help us bring a fresh look and a new direction to what has become a complex situation. It will also bring professionalism as well as diversity to our local school boards. In 2013, this legislature made similar changes to the State Board of Education that Assembly Bill 255 makes to local school boards. Those reforms have had enormous positive impacts on the State Board of Education, including increased collaboration, greater respectability, and more efficient government, which has resulted in better outcomes for our students. We appreciate the speaker bringing forward this much needed education reform. Our economy, and more importantly, our students are depending on your leadership. We strongly support Assembly Bill 255 and urge this committee to do so as well. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for the support, Ms. McMenamin. That was hard. Okay, can we go to the next caller in support?
Caller with the last three digits of 110. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. This is Hugh Anderson, Anderson, Managing Director for Hightower Las Vegas and Chairman of the Vegas Chamber's Government Affairs Committee. The Vegas Chamber is in enthusiastic support of Assembly Bill 255 and appreciates the work that the Speaker of the Assembly has done to bring this bill forward today. We view AB 255 as a necessary K-12 reform, and if we want our community to have trust and credibility in the school board. There are two primary reasons the Vegas Chamber supports this bill. First, by having a mixture of appointed and elected board members, there is the opportunity for board members to be appointed based on their expertise and skill sets. This would be very beneficial given the complexities of overseeing one of the largest and most diverse school systems in the United States. Second, reform is necessary if we want our community to have trust and credibility in the school board. AB 255 is essential to addressing the governance challenges that we have seen with our local school boards over the years. We believe that trust in the school board has eroded significantly over the years. So much is riding on the oversight of and decisions made by school boards in Nevada. The success of students and accountability for them receiving a good education, the trust of parents in knowing their children are adequately prepared for the future, and the bigger picture, economic development and the vitality of our region. Our workforce is one of the number one factors of our economy. AB 255 not only brings more diverse expertise to school boards, but also will bring more accountability for the results of the decisions they make. We've seen success when a similar approach was taken with the Nevada State Board of Education in 2013. That state board is now a mix of appointed and elected board members. That board has become more effective, earned greater credibility, and has worked more openly since those changes were implemented. This type of model works in Nevada, and we should adopt it at the local school district level. At the end of the day, the adoption of AB 255 will benefit the most important constituency in education, Nevada's students. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for your time. We urge your support for this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 576. Please press star 6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Kelsey Henderson, KELSEYHENDERSON, and I'm speaking today to urge you to support AB 255. As the fifth largest school district in the nation, CCSD's 300,000 students cannot afford to have board members who do not understand their position, seek to further their own publicity, and make a mockery of our school district. Our children cannot afford board members who seek to use their position on the board as a political stepping stone while spending only a fraction of their time addressing student needs. Our students deserve knowledgeable experts in the field of education. This is why it's so important that we pass AB 255 to reform the school board and better serve our students. Our school board members need to have a financial expertise. As the overseers of a $2.4 billion budget, CCSD board members must have a deep understanding of how to allocate funds appropriately. Allowing some board members to be appointed by educational experts will ensure that our budget is spent in a way that maximizes student achievement. CCSD board meetings are inefficiently run, and this ultimately hurts students. While highly effective school districts spend 70% of their meetings discussing instructional practices, at CCSD board meetings, this accounts for only 30% of discussion. Better instructional practices means better student outcomes. CCSD board members mismanage their time and consistently underserve our students. For these reasons, it is essential that we support AB 255.
Thank you, Ms. Henderson. Thank you. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 598. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Nicole Rourke, NICOLEROURKE, representing the City of Henderson. The City of Henderson supports AB 255, and we thank Speaker Frierson for introducing this systemic change to school district leadership. Appointing school board members can provide greater accountability to parents and the community. The City Council receives numerous constituent concerns regarding our education system with no direct means to address them. By appointing a school board member, municipalities can ensure that leaders of the school district have the experience necessary to guide such a large organization and be responsive to parents and families. As Speaker Frierson mentioned, there are many appointed school boards across the country. According to Education Commission of the States, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Virginia all authorize some or all members of a school board to be appointed. Several large school districts have appointed or mixed boards, including Boston Public Schools and New York City, whose 13-member board is entirely appointed with 8 members selected by the mayor, and the remaining 5 seats filled by each borough president. New Jersey has also long provided for mayoral appointment of school board members. Additionally, 5 out of 10 of the school districts with the largest per pupil spending have appointed school board members, according to a 2020 research paper on the topic by UNLV student Yaneli Yamas. Our schools and our community need strong leadership at the school board level. At no time has this been more evident than now. The last year has presented unprecedented challenges for every organization, and working with our regional partners has been essential to providing the leadership and support needed by our community. We have seen the amazing work that can be accomplished in our communities with true collaboration, hard work, and mutual respect. Schools are the cornerstone of our communities, and our kids deserve nothing less than professional leaders prepared to take on our greatest challenges. We look forward to the opportunities to appoint a member to the Clark County School District Board of School Trustees who will raise the level of accountability, professionalism, and collaboration of the board, as well as bring the expertise that is required to make crucial decisions for an organization with a $2.4 billion operating budget and a capital program in excess of $4 billion. Thank you for allowing me to express the City of Henderson's support for AB 255.
Thank you, Ms. Rourke. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 628. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Maureen Schaefer, SCHAFER, and I'm the Executive Director of the Council for a Better Nevada. In the previous 2 decades, many large urban districts have established an alternative appointment local system in an attempt to shift the power, incentive, accountability, and outcome structure to assist individuals serving as school board members in those roles. A 2013 Center for American Progress report by national education researcher Rick Hess developed 5 key findings from reviewing progress outcomes of 11 appointed large U.S. urban districts over 15 years. 1, local appointed boards demonstrated higher strategic investment in conditions that support local teaching and learning. 2, over 10 years, local-led boards improved their district-wide performance compared to statewide improvement. 3, of the 11 districts followed, all made progress. 5 made substantial progress, narrowing the student achievement gap within their states, New York, New Haven, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Baltimore, and the remaining, Hartford, Harrisburg, Boston, and Providence, showed some progress on academic measures. 4, local control in New York had significant impact and 4th and 8th grade student achievement. African American and Latinos growing 1 to 3% proficiency annually. 5, local control in Boston and Chicago showed strong gains in the initial period of governance and then had moved to a tapering period by the conclusion of the study's completion. Also, in a 2015 Legislative Education Committee testimony, the Gwynn Center presented research suggesting that board members who looked like the students they served better ensured the students' holistic needs were being met. In a majority-minority district like Clark County, it's critical to pursue all opportunities that will close achievement and other gaps between groups. Passage of AB 255 is an opportunity to reinforce and amplify how critical a value school boards play in the success of every child's education. An appointed hybrid local model is an exciting chance for Nevada to continue to empower those on our school boards with more accountability and guidance for success of our kids and greater opportunity for higher academic outcomes leading to a brighter future. Thank you to Speaker Frierson for bringing this critical bill forward.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer, for the call. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits, 010. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
John Vellardita, Vellardita. I'm representing the Clark County Education Association. We represent 18,000 licensed professionals in the Clark County School District. I'm here to speak in support of AB 255. An education delivery system has two key components, the business side of the enterprise and the instructional side of the delivery system. An effective school board can make a difference in system efforts to improve student performance. Unfortunately, that has not been the case in the Clark County School District. We need a functioning and highly effective governance board overseeing our school district. For the past 10 years, we have seen school board after school board engage in dysfunctional behavior at the expense of students and frontline educators. To be clear, we believe that there have been and currently are many trustees who are well-intended and effective as trustees. But we have witnessed time and time again is a small faction that disrupts the governance process. We need change. This bill gives the largest local governments appointment powers to school boards because they have a vested interest in making sure our schools are educating our students. The Clark County Commission and the cities of Vegas and Henderson have track records of supporting, investing, and initiating programs to help our public schools and students. I might add North Las Vegas as well to that list. We have confidence that granting them appointment powers will be an extension of that track record. This bill has the majority of electeds as members of the board. This bill also has an appointment process where local government bodies can be held accountable to their appointments. This bill also has an orderly transition to a hybrid model of governance by allowing current elected trustees to serve out their terms. We need change, and we need it now. The Nevada Board of Education changed their governance structure to a model of elected and appointed board members. It functions, and it has served its purpose for our state. It's time for that same approach to take place for the Clark County School District. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vellardita. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 225. Please press *6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Well, thank you. This is Michael Nast in Clark County. Thank you, Chair. As you all know, Clark County is currently responsible for building and maintaining the majority of our roads in Nevada, governing one of the largest public hospitals in the United States, operating 5 airports, including our nation's 9th busiest, along with managing your air quality, compliance, social services, and holding the majority of seats on dozens of regional boards, including the Metropolitan Police Department, LVCVA, RTC, and so many others. Given the wide portfolio of issues that local government has taken on and is tasked with, my constituents are routinely shocked that Clark County does not have any oversight over Clark County School District. For years, strong overtures have been made to improve the partnerships between local government and school board, but silos can be hard to break down. In fact, in hopes of strengthening and building on the collaboration, Chair Kirkpatrick went as far as to call to order the first ever CCSD Trustees Board of County Commissioners joint session to work on these important issues the year before last. I believe that AB 255 will allow for appropriate oversight from local government and accountability of our education while strengthening the voters' choice. I thank you for your consideration and thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Raff, for calling in. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 947. Please press *6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Assembly Education Committee. For the record, my name is Kenny Belknap. That's KennyBelknap. I'm a high school social studies teacher here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I strongly support AB 255. I want to start by thanking Speaker Frierson for this important piece of legislation to help improve our education system here in Nevada and help improve educational outcomes, especially here in Clark County. AB 255 is critically important to improve our school board of trustees in the state of Nevada. We need our school boards of trustees to be able to effectively monitor and support the work of our school superintendents And right now, the School Board of Trustees in Clark County falls far short of what their job actually is. Instead of focusing on student outcomes and finding ways to support their learning, they spend their time with petty internal politics and bickering amongst themselves. These trustees spend only a fraction of their time focusing on kids' learning. What exactly are they doing? Why are we fine with this as a society? We desperately need expertise on these boards, not just local politicians. CCSD trustees oversee a multi-billion-dollar budget, and we desperately need at least one person with a finance background on that board to help advise the rest on how to manage this money. I know there's always a back and forth between CCSD and the legislator about education funding, the appropriate levels, how much they actually got, can they actually cover all the costs. So by implementing this hybrid model with getting professionals on there, we can begin to bridge that gap and eliminate this issue and get back to the important work of finding more funding for education, not bickering about where the current funding levels are going. I understand that some people might be worried about changing this democratically elected board and making it a hybrid board, but for decades we've proven time and time again that having only elected officials on there is a recipe for disaster. I ask any of you to think of one time where you heard someone mention the CCS Board of Trustees and people didn't roll their eyes immediately. We desperately need change to this board to bring stability for our kids and our schools. If you disagree with me that this change is absolutely needed, I encourage you, please sit through one of the school board meetings from start to finish. I guarantee you will immediately come here and vote yes on this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Belnick. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 530. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller 530, we can't hear you. Is your phone muted?
Let me try this. Sorry, closer.
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Marilyn Kirkpatrick, Marilyn Kirkpatrick. Madam Chair and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify on this bill today, and thank you to Speaker Frierson for hearing from so many people around the Valley of what concerns are on the school board trustees and how they handle themselves when it comes to the needs of our students. So what I think you heard here today is students need voices. And I think you also heard that there's a diversity of issues that are out there, and that we need folks that can bring a level of professionalism and some additional insight to the school board trustees. And we also need to ensure that more than 20% of the school board meetings are being spent on education. That should be 80% of the conversation should be about educational needs. For us here in Clark County, and I'm speaking today as a parent, a grandparent, and a product of Clark County School District, there's been many opportunities missed for students where we've tried to collaborate, and the school board has literally not wanted to take the initiative to help bring ideas such as open doors, open schools, such as preschool, such as workforce development, so that we could have many tools for our students to succeed. So every time that we asked for other things that we can work on, we can't seem to get there. And to give you an example, last session, you all passed 309 for us. We established a truancy program. We were met with resistance from the school board trustees, and we still continue to be met with resistance from the school board trustees on sharing data so that we can make sure that these kids are getting in and getting an education. So I ask that we all consider a new hybrid model where we can regionally work together to ensure that students' needs are met and that we bring the level of expertise to the current board so that we can have children's best interests first. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you, Speaker Frierson, for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you, Chair Kirkpatrick. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 428. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
My name is Sherry Raymond Griggs, CHERIYMOND-GRIGGS. Chairwoman Bilbray Axelrod and committee members. I'm a kindergarten teacher at the James B. McMillan Elementary School with the Clark County School District and a parent of an 8th grader in the Clark County School District. I am speaking to you today in support of AB 255. I have worked for the Clark County School District for 7 years and have seen several changes to the makeup of our school board. Unfortunately, I am challenged to see any real functionality from the board most of the time. The primary focus of the board should be the education and protection of children first, but they seem to have lost sight of that years ago. While board meetings are typically lengthy affairs, there is very little discussion and decision-making that directly supports and benefits student achievement. This is disturbing. As a parent and an employee of the 5th largest district in the country, our children are struggling with ineffective curricula and random rules and regulations, and the board spends their time arguing and tweeting. Our children and the district's employees do not have the time for board members to learn the educational system. Our children and the district's employees do not have time for board members to learn federal and state laws regarding our school program. Our children and our district's employees do not have time for board members to take crash courses in finance and budgeting. We need board members who are ready, willing, and able to support the educational success of our children from day one on the board. It is beyond comprehension that there are members who have occupied seats on the school board when they are employed by private or charter districts in direct competition with the public school system. How can they be impartial on votes pertaining to student success? It is beyond comprehension that there are members who have occupied seats on the school board when they work for agencies and legal actions against large groups of district employees. How can they be impartial on votes pertaining to those employees? No one likes to equate a school district to a major corporation, but they are quite similar. There is a reason that school board seats are supposed to be nonpartisan, but recent board members clearly are bringing specific political agendas to the table. This is not fair to the children who must ride the roller coaster of neglect and politics until someone replaces them or they term out. The proposed hybrid board.
You are past 2
Yes?
minutes and we do need to wrap up this testimony. So if you could just finish your testimony as soon as you can.
Thank you. I have one sentence.
Okay.
The proposed hybrid board gives communities a voice while allowing regional governments the opportunity to include educational, governance, and financial experts in order to better address the needs of our children in our communities. Our children, our future leaders, are depending on you to support AB 255. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to have to close the testimony in support. I know that people have been joining on to make comments, and I apologize for that. We just have several more bills we need to hear, so we are going to have to move on to opposition testimony. And if you are in the queue and you want to write down your testimony, I will make sure that all committee members see that and we can get it on Nellis as well. So thank you, and we will move on to opposition.
To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 255, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 486, please press *6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. Alexander Marks, MARKS, with the Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSEA opposes AB 255 to convert 3 trustees in Nevada's largest school districts from elected to appointed members. Instead, we offer several proposals to improve the professionalism, collaboration, accountability, and responsiveness while preserving school boards as democratically elected bodies. We appreciate our conversation with Speaker Frierson about this issue, and we look forward to working with him to improve Nevada's largest school districts. Nevada takes pride in promoting the democratic process. Democratic participation is the cornerstone of governance in the United States and in our state, and locally elected school boards represent the American institution that comes closest to the ideal of local self-governance. Local school boards are in place to ensure that the schools in each community reflect the values of the people. School boards provide direction and oversight for the superintendent who manages the day-to-day operations of the schools. They also provide direct accountability to the community. Like any other institution, there are times when school districts and school boards do not live up to this ideal. This is true for school districts with elected school boards and those without. The difference is elected school boards provide the public with a direct line of accountability. Appointed school boards are shielded by an appointing authority who typically has significant other responsibilities in addition to the appointment of school board members. It's extremely rare to see an elected official voted out of office over the actions or conduct of another official they've appointed. This is truer still when the appointment is made by another deliberative body. Democracy is messy. Money can have a substantial influence on elections, and sometimes campaigns are negative and turn off voters. Oftentimes, our preferred candidates don't win. While these are challenges that are real, they are certainly not enough to abandon our system of democratic governance. Instead, we've implemented reforms over the years to make elections more democratic. This work continues here during the legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marks, for your testimony. Next caller in opposition.
Caller with the last three digits of 017. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam. My name is Sylvia Lazos, Sylvia-Lazos, and I am a law professor and someone who has studied this issue of elected versus appointed, especially in the judicial context. I initially was a researcher who really believed in appointments, but over the course of years and studying the subject matter, I have switched to the position that electeds usually are a better way for the people to make their voices heard. Number one, Nevada is a populous state. If you look at our state constitution, we have ballot initiatives, recalls, referendums, and we also elect judges. So unlike the examples that one of the callers talked about, which are all back east, we are part of a Western culture that gives a lot of power to our voters. So it is opposite to our culture to be taking away power from the voters. To the issue of diversity, Speaker Frierson, I appreciate your statements, but I frankly have not found any research that says appointed boards are more diverse. When I first started studying the subject, Miriam Schering said to me, Sylvia, if I had been part of an appointed system, I would have never been part of the Supreme Court. It is the opportunity to be elected that allowed women to become part of the Nevada Supreme Court. And the research that I have looked at in terms of judges states that it is true that with respect to that first Black or that first Latino official, governors and appointeds are better at it. But when you look at the long run, like Miriam Schering said, usually elected boards are much better. I'm also very concerned of collapsing 7 districts to 4 and the dilution of minority votes. I know that Speaker Frierson is familiar with City of Mobile, but anytime that you increase the size of a district, you are diluting minority communities. I think it is very important to have an African American and Latinx voices in a district that is 68% made up of minority children. I totally agree with Jason Frierson that we need more professionalism in the school board. I think it has been unfortunate that during the last year, there have been such tensions over such difficult issues as school reopenings. And most school boards, frankly, have not done a good job with school reopenings. But we can improve professionalism, number one, by looking at compensation. Number two, by giving them good staff support, the kind of staff support that the legislature itself enjoys, like an attorney that is independent and is competent, financial advisors who are also competent, and that's actually for each trustee. Thank you. To some, my opinions will be published, I hope, this weekend in one of the local papers, but I urge you to rethink the approach and take away voice from we the people and think more about the professionalism and supports that our trustees need.
Thank you, Ms. Lazos, for the testimony. Next caller in opposition.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 577. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. Chris Daly, D-A-L-Y, Nevada State Education Association. Just expanding on the comments from my colleague, Alexander Marks. While democratically elected school boards bring the greatest levels of accountability and responsiveness to the communities they serve, we agree more should be done to increase the levels of professionalism and collaboration at school boards, while also bringing greater accountability and responsiveness to our communities. We've developed a list of possible school board reforms we ask this committee to consider as an alternative to the appointment of school board members. One, the addition of advisory seats on local school boards could bring more breadth of diversity of perspective. In addition to representatives of local governments, we would ask for consideration of important education stakeholders like educators, students, and representatives of the PTA. As a statewide code of conduct for school board trustees, including a process for possible removal from office for transgressions, would set clear expectations along with new lines of accountability. Instituting a regular rotation of school board president would lead to more collaboration between school board trustees and decrease factionalism on school boards. Limiting a superintendent contract to 2 years would make superintendents more accountable to the seat of boards and lead to better working relationships with board members. Compensation of trustees that better reflect responsibility would lead to more qualified and professional school board candidates. Elevating ballot placement of school board races would lead to greater participation. Electing school board candidates through ranked choice voting would reward candidates who are more collaborative. Public financing of school board elections would help level the playing field while increasing communications between candidate campaigns and the voting public. These are some of several other ideas that we have to improve the workings of school boards. NSEA stands ready to work with the Speaker or committee members on any of these important board reforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly, for your testimony. Next caller in opposition.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 876. Please press star 6 to unmute. Once again, caller with the last 3 digits of 876. Please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Bridget Peterson, Bridget Peterson. I'm the immediate past president for the Nevada Association of School Boards. I wanted to begin by letting you know that throughout my 7 years of service as a school board trustee, I've had the privilege of interacting and meeting trustees across the state. As a general rule, school board trustees are the salt of the earth. They truly want to be involved in improving their communities and honestly care about children and education and take their job seriously. During the past year, we at NASB targeted our training to be more specific and focused around improving board governance and accountability. As an organization, the Nevada Association of School Boards has worked with the NDE, UNR Extended Studies, and the National School Boards Association to improve the training. We now have a specific board governance program that trustees will be taking over the course of 2 years that not only fulfills all lawful requirements of training, but goes above and beyond. Our goal is to help trustees understand their role and how to serve in appropriate and positive ways. In addition to improved training for school board trustees, the Nevada Association of School Boards has developed a proposal for increased accountability measures in lieu of appointments. It is our belief that by allowing individual districts to better self-govern and increase individual member accountability, that board governance will improve, giving boards more teeth to self-govern, if you will. We propose that restorative practice 3 strikes rule for non-completion of training, governance, and boardsmanship violations, such as open meeting laws, violation of breach of contract, with enforcement from NASB be enacted through legislative means. Options for these 3 strikes could be as follows. Strike 1. A written warning in the form of names listed on district websites for violation of board governance policies and an email to trustees from NASB outlining such violations. With continued inappropriate behavior, strike 2, review by the Ethics Commission. Strike 3, Board of Trustees may publicly sanction board members in an open meeting. These are updates on training and ideas we wanted to share with you today. This concludes my remarks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony in opposition. Next caller in opposition.
Caller with the last three digits of 517. Please press star 6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Anna Binder, ANNABINDER. I've submitted a written comment on this, and kind of hearing the pros and the cons today. I just really want to point out that I started my venture quite a bit ago, and the only resolution that we ever get from our elected board is when us parents show up and we speak out. And a perfect example of this is getting our graduations back on, getting contact sports. Like a lot of the efforts coming forward into reopening and getting things done have been literally through the blood, sweat, and tears of us parents reaching out to our elected officials. And we've had many elected officials pointing back to us saying, this isn't my job. And as any elected official I've reiterated is that this is all of your jobs. You guys are elected to represent us. And so the hesitation in putting any appointed official into our board of trustee or any other elected governing board is literally, we just don't see where the accountability is. And we've been through so much finger pointing. And the only thing now currently holding us up in CCSD is the superintendent. And for anyone who's actually been attending the meetings, watching the work sessions, going through the bond advisory committees, these are all meetings that, rotates in circles. And when we can't get action from our board right now, it's because of our superintendent. So pointing a blame back at, wanting, yes, of course, more professionalism, obviously. I do concur with other people that have spoken in opposition to this, but there are other ways to get that. And namely, a huge problem I have with this bill is that it leaves out like Mesquite and Prim and our outer lying, especially for Clark County, Laughlin, we have, outer lying areas that don't get an appointed trustee that are currently represented. So, I get, we'll have to look at rezoning and like all of these things, but I just really want to point out that this past year, anything that we have been able to get for our children have been from the community reaching out and demanding those things, from the board, from our elected officials, from the governor. And if you start putting those appointed people in there, we're just going to have more finger pointing, and we can't deal with more finger pointing. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next caller in opposition.
Caller with the last three digits of 311. Please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Hello, my name is Annalise Castor, ANNALISE, Castor, CASTOR. And I really do want to thank Speaker Frierson for bringing this issue to the forefront. As a mother of 5 children, all in school age, and a 4th-generation Nevadan, I am really overjoyed that we are talking about this wonderfully important issue. I am opposed on this because while I appreciate the wonderful points of having appointed and school board members and its increase of professionalism, which I do support, I believe that that is really not the solution. The solution is not just requalifying the school board, but to give us more of them. If you look at a 2015 Lindsay study presentation, which I will send to the board, they have us as a state with 2 to 3 million people, the most underrepresented state as regard to school boards. Arkansas has 310, Kansas 302. The closest one next to us is Utah, which has 40 school boards. We have 17. We have less than half of the lowest amount for our population. And the ratio gets even worse. The New York Department of Education has 32 community education councils with 11 members each. And a lot of those are appointed. That makes the ratio one trustee represents 3,125 kids. Chicago Public Schools has 550 seats and local school councils. That gives their representation, one representative for every 72 children. Clark County School District has 7 trustees that represent 1 in 45,513 students. I hold no blame for the trustees being inadequate to do their job when their task of who they have to represent is so much more. This has not been re-edited and re-looked at since the 1950s. Legislators, I invite you to think of your area. Your seat, if we go back to the 1950s, might not even have existed. And while just adding more community seats to the trustee board tends to be ineffective in most large school districts, adding school boards presents wonderful opportunities for communities to come together and have a voice to represent their distinct communities. We actually already have something set up that is doing just this. Community education advisory boards are present in Mesquite, Moapa Valley, and Henderson. Because of those communities are able to be represented in a wonderful way. For fact, Moapa has been open while all the rest of Clark County has not, and that is in large part because of their CAB.
If I could have you.
All right, thank you. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next caller in opposition.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 217. Please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Hello, my name is Ed Gonzalez, EDGONZALEZ, and I'm speaking in opposition. A few years back, I was supportive of this concept, but I think this bill misses some of the mark. I am a critic of the school district, and I do understand the dysfunction we've seen at the school board, though it has improved in recent years. But I think there's other things with the bureaucracy and with the superintendency that we've seen problems as well. As an SC community member on the east side, we've been trying to get a health clinic up there for the last 3 years. The reason we haven't gotten it is because not of the school board, but because of the bureaucracy within CCSD. It's not been a funding issue. We want to make sure that students in there have mental and behavioral support services, especially for special education needs. And a few years back, we saw in the previous superintendent, when the district spent some of the reserves against state law without a board vote, a board trustee asked for information from somebody below the superintendent level, one of the senior administrators, and the superintendent refused to bring him up and answer the question. We've never seen stuff like that before. And to me, there's some important information about the bureaucracy and how things are governed at that level that may need to be added to this bill. So I'm in opposition of this bill. I think there can be changes. I'm more than happy to take the speaker up and send suggested amendments that may be included if necessary. But I think the most important thing too before I go is that municipalities and counties want to have more of a say. There can be a process if we decide to go that route to let them form their own school districts, make them smaller, keep elected positions, and have those communities with a stronger say in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, for your testimony. Do we have more callers in opposition?
Caller with the last 3 digits, 436. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, my name is Nancy Jones. My phone number, my name is spelled NANCYJONES, and I'm representing Nevada Families for Freedom, and I personally am a product of the Clark County School District. Nevada Families for Freedom is concerned that professionalizing the school boards by adding these appointed members will increase the number of quote-unquote professionals who are being paid by the public, but who are not accountable to the public. Currently, parents in school districts have little say in what is taught, who is teaching, and how to meet the needs of their children. Democratically elected school boards are one of the only ways that parents and community members can be involved in the governance of local schools and school boards. We agree that we need to improve funding allocation, support student achievement and student outcomes, which we would assert extends beyond test scores and arbitrary grading structures to the ultimate goal of providing Nevada children with the ability to live lives of maximum joy. We also assert that it would be best to limit the size of school districts so that no school board has such incredible responsibility over expansive budgets and radically diverse neighborhood schools, but we can increase, by having smaller school districts, we can increase the direct communication between parents and administrators, and provide the most local solutions for the most local problems. We oppose this bill, and we would encourage more accountability through local self-governance with direct accountability to the taxpayers, to the parents, and to find more creative solutions rather than increasing bureaucracy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Are there any other callers in opposition?
Chair, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. With that, I will close testimony in opposition, and I will open testimony in neutral.
Testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 255. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 724. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Sam Castor, S-A-M, last name C-A-S-T-O-R. I'm a beneficiary of public schools. I grew up with nothing. I had Christmas delivered to my doorstep by kind neighbors, but I was able to work under President Obama in the Office of Science and Technology Policy after attending law school, and I currently work as an House counsel and an executive at Switch. I am a pro Speaker Frierson fan, and I appreciate his vision of a hybrid approach on this. I like the appointed concept. I like that it increases accountability. As someone with kids at CCSD, I hope you'll see, we also need more representation. Speaker Frierson, you pointed out that the Baltimore County was a positive example of how to allow elections to benefit the community. They have 63,786 students with 7 elected board members. Clark County has over 5 times that, with 330,000 students, but still only 7 board members. I agree choosing the right school board member is just as important as choosing the right doctor. But even an amazing doctor can only do so much, and each board member of CCSD is currently responsible for 45,513 students. They possibly cannot represent them. Vegas is extremely diverse, and I know Speaker Frierson is striving to enhance representation of this diversity. More board members would ensure they represented that diversity. I strongly recommend we have more board members, perhaps even have 7 more appointed positions to complement the existing voted positions. Alternatively, you could break up school district into equal portions that reinforce proximate representation. As presented, this bill will sideline the cities and communities, except for the largest 2. That takes this law away from effective representation, not towards it. No one needs to be reminded of the nearly 20 students that have committed suicide here in Clark County. The youngest one was 9. If we had more board members, greater representation, we'd be more responsive to the needs of students and have greater ability to deal with the budgets, pandemics, the innovation, and countless other pressures that school boards face. Thank you for your attention to this and your service to Nevada.
Thank you for the testimony. I think that, I don't believe that was neutral testimony. I'm going to go ahead and put that in opposition-y. So, well, just for the sake of the public record, I'm going to put that as neutral. Next caller, hopefully in neutral.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 874. Please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
My name is Rebecca Garcia, REBECCA-GARCIA, and I am the president of the Nevada Parent-Teacher Association. Nevada PTA's mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. Elected representation serves an important role in providing a voice for the community at the local, state, and national level. School board trustees are entrusted with critical decisions that directly impact the quality of education children receive. Nevada PTA is neutral regarding AB 255 as currently written. The current system has challenges which must be addressed. Trustees in Nevada's largest school districts have oversight responsibility for substantial budgets, workforces, and diverse student populations. School boards are to provide direction and oversight from the superintendent, who is responsible for daily operations of the district. Trustees, as elected representatives, provide both a voice and accountability to the community.
Yet often it is clear that not all trustees have the relevant experience and training to perform the duties to which they are entrusted. Lack of understanding regarding fiduciary responsibilities, governance, and policy often lead to protracted meetings and ineffective decision-making that is not centered on student achievement. Too often, limited time is wasted and important decisions delayed due to process concerns and personality conflicts. Families in the community often feel unheard and express a lack of trust in decision-making. The ability of a school board to function effectively within policies and procedures is essential to ensuring that student outcomes are always the highest priority. PTA has long supported the democratic process and promoted voter engagement in school board races, which often receive limited care and attention. We also recognize the legislature's desire to address these challenges, which have existed for many years and directly impacts the district's ability to ensure student success. In 2013, the legislature made changes to the composition of the State Board of Education, which have produced positive impacts. We would recommend adopting similar changes that appointed positions include experience and representation requirements, such as business experience, educator, and parent representation. Additionally, there's an opportunity to provide clear expectations and accountability related to the conduct, roles, and responsibilities of the school board members. We appreciate the speaker bringing forward this bill to have this conversation and stand ready to work with the speaker and committee regarding board reforms that will benefit our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Do we have another caller in neutral?
Caller with the last three digits of 402. Please press *6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Mark Newburn, MARK-NEWBURN. I am the current Vice President of the Nevada State Board of Education, speaking only for myself today in the neutral position. The hybrid model has worked very well for the State Board of Education over the last 8 years and has consistently produced a high-functioning board governance team with broad representation and deep educational expertise. I'm speaking in neutral today because I feel the bill needs to make better use of the lessons learned from the State Board. Adding key features like two-step appointment process, the use of appointed non-voting members, and the selection of appointed voting members from stakeholder groups with a vested interest in improving student outcomes would go a long way to reduce concerns and increase the chance of producing a high-functioning board governance team. I would like to thank Speaker Frierson for introducing this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other callers in the neutral position?
Caller with the last three digits, 861. Please press *6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
This is Danielle Ford, DANIELLEFORD. I'm a Clark County School District trustee, and I'm calling in as an individual citizen, voter, and parent. There was a tech issue when calling in, and my comments are in opposition of this bill. Let me start by saying that I completely understand where this bill is coming from and why the idea of switching to an appointed board could be very appealing. If I was in the legislature's position, I might even support it, but my perspective as a trustee is why I completely oppose it, as I've seen a lot of things that nobody else has, even those who follow.
We've already closed and tested. If you would like to submit your remarks, we'll put them in the negative, but we've already moved on to neutral, and I'm sorry that you were having issues, but if you could just, okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Ford.
So you'll move them over there? Okay.
Yes.
So I am in opposition with it. Thank you. I will just say that I do agree with the speaker and the committee, pretty much everything that's been said, quite frankly. I agree with most of it, but I think that there's a lot of questions to ask that aren't being asked. For instance, I agree that the school board members need better training. We actually already do receive mandatory training and continued education. So
I just wanted to put this in writing, and then we'll put it in neutral, and I'll make sure that all the members and it's on Nellis, but we do have to move on. Okay?
I gotcha. Am I able to comment in neutral?
Yes. No, you will write your comments and submit them, and we'll put them on Nellis, so everyone will see them.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate getting the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Okay, we will move on to, do we have another call in neutral, or that might have been it?
Chair, at this time, we have no more callers in neutral for AB 255.
Okay, well, we lost our speaker because he was summoned to the governor. So we will close the hearing on AB 255 and open the hearing for AB 206. Assemblyman Levitt, begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So do I get more than 15 minutes?
No.
Just kidding. I won't need it. So Assembly Bill. I'll take it. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I am Glenn Levitt, representing Assembly District 23 in Clark County, and I really do want to thank you for your time today. I know it's been a long day, and I thank you for the brief moment that I have with you. Because of the pandemic, kids of military parents have had a difficult time enrolling in distance education programs in Nevada. My goal with AB 206 is to ensure that this doesn't happen again or in the future, and to try and ensure that as a state, we support our military families by minimizing challenges to accessing educational programs here. Military children often face multiple educational challenges relating to relocation, such as lack of standardization between schools, missed deadlines, lack of course completion or registration, to name a few. According to the Department of Defense, their best practices virtual school enrollment states can minimize disruptions in education for military children by allowing them to participate in technology-based educational opportunities while transitioning between duty stations. Last year, Alabama passed a similar bill, Senate Bill 143, which allows dependents of military members of the U.S. Armed Forces to be considered residents upon receiving orders to relocate to Alabama for the purpose of enrolling in attending virtual school. Additionally, Texas Educational Code allows for a student who is a dependent of the U.S. military member who has been deployed or transferred to Texas to enroll full-time in Texas virtual school networks if a student was enrolled in a publicly funded school outside the state during the preceding year. Two of these states are considered examples of best practices highlighted by the Department of Defense's best practices for virtual enrollment. With AB 206, Nevada could join that list. So the sections of the bill, there's not too many. It's pretty simple. First, Section 1 requires pupils who do not reside in the county and are enrolled in full-time. It requires that pupils who do not reside in the county and are enrolled full-time in distance education programs to be included in the count of pupils for apportionment purposes. It's a tongue twister. Section 2 provides that the pupil may enroll in a full-time distance education program if their parent or guardian is a member of the armed forces and who has received orders to relocate to Nevada but has not yet relocated. Finally, Section 3 authorizes a pupil to enroll in full-time distance education program at a charter school if their parent or guardian receives orders to relocate in Nevada. And that was my presentation. I told you it wasn't going to even take 5 minutes. I want to leave time for the 40 people that I have to call in testimony. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions in the committee? I'm looking. You don't have any questions in the committee? All right. Then we will go on to your 40 people. Could we open up testimony in support of AB 206, please?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 206, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 747, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Chair and committee members, for the record, my name is Andrew Lee Pilbit, last name Lepeilbet, and I represent the combat wounded veterans of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, the 70,000 disabled American veterans in the state, and I'm the current chair of the United Veterans Legislative Council. This bill is an essential element we've needed for some time. A lot of our service members get orders of a permanent change of station called PCS when you hear their jargon. And when they get that change, their family sometimes is moved before them, and because they're sent on TDY training for the new military assignment they have. So we fully support AB 206, and it's the right thing to do for our active military, our Guard, and our families. In the case of our Guard, sometimes we have Guard members that are transferred from northern Nevada to southern Nevada. It's just like going to another state, and they need to get their kids enrolled as soon as possible in any means possible. So, again, United Veterans Legislative Council, the Disabled American Veterans, the Military Order of the Purple Heart endorse the approval of AB 206. Thank you.
Thank you for your call. Do we have another caller in support of AB 206?
Caller with the last three digits of 080, please press star 6 to unmute. You have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilber Axelrod and members of the Education Committee. My name is Noah Sullivan, Noahsullivan, and I'm an extern with the Government's Relations Department at the Clark County School District. I'm here to testify today in support of AB 206, which streamlines the process for distance education for children of military families. Allowing students to start their education as soon as their parents receive an order to relocate to Nevada ensures that they don't fall behind their classmates. After this past year, distance education has become a part of the conversation for how we can reach students in an innovative way, and AB 206 accomplished this exact goal. Education should not be put on pause simply because a student would not have a physical access to a Nevada school before their family relocates. This bill offers a simple solution targeted to a very specific group of students who often struggle when they transition to new schools because of their parents' relocation. Students would be able to get their education started ahead of time and be prepared for the school year ahead. We appreciate Assemblyman Levitt for sponsoring this bill and letting us speak on this subject today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the call. Are there more calls in support?
Caller with the last three digits of 498, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Erica Valdez, ERICAVALDRIZ, with the Vegas Chamber and the Vegas Chamber Military Affairs Committee. The Chamber is in support of AB 206. The Chamber supports the count of students who are enrolled in distance learning because our Nevada students deserve the support and benefits from our school system. This bill will provide students whose parents or guardians are servicemen and servicewomen more ease and accessibility to continue their education through the K-12 education experience seamlessly. AB 206 is highly beneficial for our students and their route to graduation. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for your time. We urge your support for this bill.
Thank you for the testimony. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 500, please fully state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Dan Morgan. Dan, D-A-N, Morgan, M-O-R-G-A-N. and I'm here before you today on behalf of the Nevada Military Support Alliance, which I serve as president, as well as the honorary Joint Task Force Commander to the Adjutant General in the Nevada National Guard. The mission of the Nevada Military Support Alliance is to organize and promote the recognition, support, and appreciation of Nevada's men and women of our armed forces, veterans, and their families. And we have been successfully doing that since 2010. We are a statewide 501c3 organization and believe that this bill, AB 206, and its sponsor, Assemblyman Levitt, are doing a great benefit to our military families throughout the state by providing educational opportunities for their children upon relocation and assignment. With that, the Nevada Military Support Alliance wholeheartedly supports AB 206, and we hope for your passage. Thank you very much for your service to our great state.
Thank you for the testimony. Next caller in support.
If you have not yet testified in support of Assembly Bill 206, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 692, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przynski, MaryPierczynski, representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents. We appreciate Assemblyman Levitt bringing this bill forward, and we're in full support. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the call. Are there any other callers in support?
Caller with the last 3 digits of 075. Please press star. You got it. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Miller, and members of the committee. My name is Kelly May Douglas, KELLIMAYDOUGLAS. I'm the Pacific Southwest Regional Liaison with the Department of Defense State Liaison Office. Our office works to assist states to improve the quality of life for military service members, veterans, and their families. On behalf of DoD and military families with school-age children, I'm writing to express our support of the policy change addressed within AB 206, which would enable military parents during reassignments to enroll their children in a Nevada distance learning program ahead of their arrival to Nevada on military orders. Military service members are typically reassigned to new duty stations every 2 to 4 years, and usually during the summer, receiving their orders within 1 to 4 months prior to moving. However, when they receive orders to move midterm, a family could anticipate this potential out-of-cycle relocation and register for virtual or distance learning courses in the receiving state in Nevada during their transition semester. This option would help military children avoid receiving course incompletions that could prevent them from graduating with their peers. If the chair, bill sponsors, and committee members would also consider expanding this pre-registration opportunity to incoming military students who have yet to arrive to Nevada for in-person as well as distance learning, military families would benefit from knowing where their children will be attending school and being assured that they will have full access to schools, programs, and courses at the same time that their peers register for school. There are nearly 5,000 school-aged children of active duty service members in Nevada. Approximately 1/3 of those students are transferring in and out of the state each year. So this change would have a great impact on the military community. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide these comments, and I stand by to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the testimony. Any other callers in support?
Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers in support of Assembly Bill 206 at this time.
Thank you. I will close testimony in support and open testimony in opposition. Are there any callers wishing to testify in opposition?
To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 206, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 206, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, we have no callers in opposition on Assembly Bill 206.
Thank you. I will close testimony in opposition and open testimony in the neutral position.
To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 206, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 936, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilbray Axelrod and members of the Assembly Committee on Education. This is Sarah Nick, S-A-R-A-H, Nick, N-I-C-K, on behalf of the Department of Education, testifying in neutral. I would like to thank Assemblyman Levitt and his attaché, Jonah, for honoring the department's request to connect after today's hearing with Assemblyman Levitt to review what implementation of this bill would look like, specifically as it relates to funding for students. The department submitted and posted fiscal note reflects this in detail. Thank you.
Thank you for the testimony in neutral, Ms. Nick. Any other callers in neutral?
Caller with the last 3 digits of 997, please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilbray Axelrod and members of the committee. This is Director Kat Miller from the Nevada Department of Veterans Services, testifying in neutral. I spell my name K-A-T-M-I-L-L-E-R. I wanted to share one bit of information with the committee, and that is the inability to engage in advanced enrollment for both distance and in-person learning is a concern that has been frequently raised to our department by transitioning service members. And that concludes my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Miller. Any other callers in neutral?
Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 206.
And thank you. And Assemblyman Levitt, I will invite you back up to make very brief closing comments if you would like.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee.
That was very brief. Thank you. And with that, I will close the hearing on AB 206. And now I will open the hearing on AB 257. Assemblywoman Martinez, please begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilbray Axelrod and members of the Education Committee. For the record, I'm Assemblywoman Susie Martinez, and I proudly represent District 12, and I'm pleased to present Assembly Bill 257 for your consideration. AB 257 seeks to address the dangers of poor ventilation and poor indoor air quality in schools. Even before the pandemic, numerous studies have shown that poor indoor air quality in our schools is not just putting the health and safety of our students and teachers at risk, but it also impacts students' attendance and performance. Studies show that student performance metrics can increase by as much as 15% simply by ensuring that classrooms are adequately ventilated. COVID-19 has heightened these concerns since studies show that it can be transmitted throughout the air. The Centers for Disease Control expressly recommends that schools assess and improve their ventilation systems in order to reduce the risk of COVID-19 spread. Yet, Nevada has no requirements or standards for ensuring this is done or done correctly. This legislation will do 3 things. 1, it sets forth the steps and standards for schools to assess and improve their ventilation systems. 2, it requires schools to undertake these steps where state or federal funds are available to fund this work. 3, it requires schools to include a plan to ensure adequate ventilation in schools as part of the plans for safe return to in-person instruction required pursuant to the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. The amendment you see before you is the result of the desire to ensure that this legislation is consistent with the most recent national guidance of school ventilation and filtration assessment programs. It is also the result of shifting the funding mechanism. Our original bill envisioned a new state-funded grant program. However, there was no funding available for this. At this time, the federal government has passed 2 recent stimulus acts that include funds for schools, stated that these funds may be used to improve school ventilation and air quality, and require schools to adopt a formal plan for a safe return to in-person instruction. With this new amendment, it ensures that schools that use these funds and make these plans follow the appropriate steps and guidance to ensure proper ventilation and safe air quality in schools. When I ran for my district, I made a promise to put education first and to be an advocate for the needs of our teachers and children. This legislation does that. The standards set forth in this bill are essential to protect the health and safety of Nevada children and teachers, both during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Throughout this entire process, I, along with our stakeholders, have had conversations with the Governor's Office of Energy, the Nevada Department of Education, and the Nevada Education Association, constituents and persons or organizations that was interested in this piece of legislation. Their inputs and feedback have been critical towards improving this bill. With me today is Chris Ruck, Director of Training with the National Energy Management Institute, and Tom Enslow, who represents the Western State Council of Sheet Metal Workers. They are both part of the broad stakeholder team that developed some of the national guidelines documents on which this legislation is based. Mr. Enslow will provide a brief overview of the specific requirements of the bill, and Mr. Ruck will be available to answer any technical questions that the committee may have. Gentlemen?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Tom Enslow, and I represent the Smart Western States Council. My clients have been working for several years, actually, with national and regional research groups to help identify measures to address the pervasive problem of poor ventilation in schools, even before the COVID-19 raised the importance of this issue in the public's eyes. For the past decade, study after study has found that poor ventilation in schools is pervasive and regularly results in carbon dioxide levels that are more than double acceptable standards. This affects not only student and teacher health and attendance, it also affects students' ability to concentrate and think. High CO2 levels have been found to actually reduce your brain's cognitive abilities, meaning it's harder for students to learn and harder for them to perform on tests. And now with COVID, we also have the added concern about increasing risk of spread, for all viruses, but particularly with COVID in this time. This is a real issue. Studies have estimated that over 50% of new HVAC systems and 85% of replacement HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, have performance issues due to poor quality installation. This has been directly tied to the use of installers who don't have adequate training. As a result, schools often assume that they have properly functioning systems, but when they are tested with CO2 monitors during occupancy, we find that the classrooms are regularly failing to provide adequate ventilation. And poor ventilation is particularly problematic in schools because they have high occupancies in small rooms. This is not an indictment of the Nevada school districts. This is a problem all across the nation. A 2020 report by the United States Government Accountability Office estimated that 40% of school districts across the nation have systems that need repair, updating, or replacement. This legislation gives the school districts the tools and the guidance needed to address this issue. I'd like to briefly run through what this bill does. This legislation creates a school ventilation and verification and repair program that ensures schools have functional ventilation systems that provide ventilations at the standardized rates that are set forth in the building codes, here in the Uniform Mechanical Code that Nevada uses, and that these systems are tested and adjusted and, if necessary, repaired by qualified personnel to provide the recommended filtration levels and ventilation rates, and also to ensure that they're running as energy efficiently as possible so that we save schools money. It also requires installation of CO2 monitors in the classrooms in order to make sure we have an ongoing measure that the ventilation is continuing to be provided correctly. What happens is that they get adjusted once, but then over the years, and depending on class size and other adjustments that are made to the systems, turning down the cooling or up the heating, these things get out of whack, and no one realizes that while it may have had the correct ventilation at first, that has ended. And that's what the CO2 monitors provide, a really important device for teachers and students to know that they are in a healthy indoor air quality environment. The original version of this legislation proposed creating a state agency grant program run by the Department of Energy. But there wasn't available state funding to provide this grant. But we do know that there's federal funding that is now available with the CRSA Act and the recent American Rescue Plan Act. They have what are called ESSER funds for schools. And among the uses that are expressly allowed to be used for this funding is to improve air quality and indoor and ventilation in schools, because the federal government recognizes the importance of this. These acts also require schools to adopt a formal plan for safe return to in-person instruction. However, these acts funnel this money directly as subgrants to the school and school districts, so it didn't make sense to have a state grant program. So that's one of the main reasons we have these amendments, in order to kind of recognize where this money is coming from and to make sure we provide guidance to schools on how to use it. The proposed amendments require schools to include a plan to ensure adequate ventilation and air quality in the plan for safe return to in-person instruction that is required to be prepared under the American Rescue Plan. The proposed amendments also require schools to follow specified steps and standards to assess and improve their ventilation systems where state or federal funding is expressly available for this work, as will be the case. And finally, the proposed amendments add additional detail and clarification to the substantive amendments that we had in the original bill, just to make sure it's consistent with the most recent guidance, and add some definitions for clarity. Now, there's been an issue in that current federal guidance on these CRSA and American Rescue Plan Act ESSER funds suggest that states cannot directly limit or restrict how this funding is used. And we recognize this as an uncertainty right now, and it's being addressed at the federal level. But in the meantime, we address this in our bill by stating that if the federal funds prohibit the state from prescribing how the funds are used, these requirements are directory rather than mandatory. So we're still telling the schools you should be doing this, but it's to your discretion as to whether or not you're using ESSER funds or you want to find some other way to address this issue. And this bill, and we also know that there's additional funding coming down. There's a school infrastructure bill that is now going through the process at the U.S. Congress, and we expect that to have some more explicit requirements to address ventilation and filtration if it hasn't already been done with the prior funds. And so this bill will ensure that Nevada already has requirements in place if that happens. Finally, in the event that the requirements are mandatory, the proposed amendments also create cost certainty by capping expenditures at $200,000, which is estimated to equal approximately, at the most, 5 to 10% of the average ESSER fund grant amounts. But schools would have the discretion to exceed that cap if they need to, if they have a system that needs replacement, but it'd be up to them to do that. But also keep in mind that 200,000 cap, that's only for schools that have systems that require repair. Schools with functioning systems will just need to adjust their systems, update their filters, and add CO2 monitors to ensure continued proper ventilation. So most schools would not be going anywhere near that cap. I think I'll stop there, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. And do we have one more presenter as well? Assemblywoman Martinez, do you have one more presenter?
Christopher Rook, NAMI for the record.
Okay. I will just let you know that you have 5 minutes.
Great, I'll make it much shorter than that.
Okay.
My name is Christopher Rook. I'm with the National Energy Management. I'm the Director of Training. I come to you with a unique perspective, is that I was a school teacher, teaching first grade, and then I spent most of my career on the roofs of schools, making sure the systems worked right. So I'm here purely as a resource to you, and if you have any questions, I am a member of the ASHRAE Epidemic Task Force, among many other groups and certifications, and I'm just here to answer any technical specific questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rook. And committee members, do we have questions? On Bill, I'm looking. Okay, I see Assemblywoman Torres. Assemblywoman Hardy, Assemblywoman Duran. So let's go in that order.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Assemblywoman, for the presentation. You know, having worked in many schools that do not have the quality ventilation systems that we need, especially during a time like now, I think this legislation is very timely. I was just wondering, and this might be a question for the co-presenters or perhaps for LCB, if we know when the plan for schools for a safe return to in-person instruction, when that ARP plan is due?
I can answer that, Assemblywoman. So it's required to be prepared prior to the receipt of any of the ARP money. So the American Relief Plan that just got passed the other week, and so it's probably a few months before that money flows. But before the schools can get that money, they have to have their plan completed.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess I think that I guess I'm a little confused by that specific portion of the legislation. I definitely support the intent of it. I'm just wondering. I'm just wondering if that's maybe the appropriate place to put that in, or perhaps maybe if we should add additional requirements that it's perhaps by July of this year or something like that. I don't know even if that's enough time for the schools to consider that plan. So I'm just wondering if that timeline would make sense. So that just might be another conversation. We can continue that offline as well.
Yeah, I'll just respond to that quickly. I think that's a possibility, what we just said. The intent here is, we've set forth the program in this legislation in order to make it easy and provide uniform standards for the schools. So really all they would have to do is reference this, this legislation in their plan. But what we really want to do is make sure that when they're doing these reopening plans, they are considering, ventilation and filtration and air quality issues as well as everything else.
Thank you for that. And I do encourage you to connect with the Assemblywoman and as well as the sponsor and see if we can figure out if that is the right place for it. Next, we will go to Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you for the question. So in regards to the $200,000 cap for the expenditures, do we have any idea of how many schools would get close to that amount, that would require those extensive repairs? Do we have any idea of kind of what we're talking about here, or do we not know that yet?
And Chris Rook might have a better idea, but I think the short answer is no. That's why there's an assessment, the requirement. So we do it because right now we don't really know what shape all these schools are in. But that said, the report put out by the federal government last year estimated that it was 40% of the school districts, and 40% of the school districts, about half their schools had serious problems. And so that would be, if that applied here, we'd probably be talking about 25% of the schools that might have, more extensive repairs needed.
Okay, thank you. And then, like you said, when the reports are due, then we would have more detailed information as to what we're talking about.
Christopher Rook, NAMI for the record. Yes, thank you for that question. It's much like bringing your car in for a 120-point inspection. And, once you bring it in, until they actually do the inspection, it's hard to determine exactly what's going to be wrong. And that's one of the benefits of doing an assessment is you're really focused in on what exactly you need to repair and taking advantage of the existing infrastructure that's there.
Thank you for that. And we will move on to Assemblywoman Duran.
And thank you for thank you, Madam Chair, and as well as Assemblywoman Martinez. I believe that we do need to update our ventilation systems especially in some of our older schools. But question is just piggybacking off Assemblywoman Hardy's questions. So are we within these funds? Are the inspections and the assessments taken out of this $200,000? Is it per school that this is going to come out of a budget? I guess Does that make sense?
So my understanding, I mean, so the assessment and the basic maintenance and upgrading, making sure you have new filters in it and all that. That's the basic work that's going to have to be done in each school. How much that costs is going to depend how many units and how big the school are. But the estimates I've heard have been between 5 and 30,000, depending on the size of the school, to do the basic work. And then if there's if there's repairs, or some upgrades that need to be done, that's where we then would start going up to that cap. But we'd imagine that that's not going to be all schools that need it.
Follow up, please.
Sure.
And is this going to be, and I know you have International Mechanical Coat uniform to that you're changing the name of the person that's the engineer doing that. Is this going to be a specific company, or are there going to be several companies probably bidding on these jobs to make the assessments and doing the repairs?
Yeah, it doesn't require a specific company, so be competitive, bidding if the schools wish. What it requires is that the companies that do the work use a trained workforce, and that's problems. A lot of contractors might have a contractor's license, but that doesn't mean that they've actually fully trained their workers. So we require, if there's going to be actual work done, then you have a certain percentage of the workforce have graduated through a 5-year apprentice school. And that can be union or non-union, and that that the adjustment work is done or overseen by what's called a testing, adjusting, and balancing contractors. And those contractors are used regularly in the industry to make sure that because they're the specialists who know how these systems work and how to test them and adjust them and make sure you're having the proper airflow. And there are essentially 3 companies that do that work in the United States: TABB, NEB, NEBB, and AABC. And the TAB, the TABB one is associated with the sheet metal workers. NEB and AABC do work for both non-union and union. They're not associated with the union. And so what most contractors do is they'll subcontract out actual TAB work. So they don't have to have a TAB person on staff in order to do this work. They would subcontract out any specific adjusting and balancing stuff to a TAB contractor. And that's what's done now in any big building when they do extensive heating, ventilation, and air conditioning work.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from committee members? Okay, I am not seeing any. So I will move on to testimony in support. Broadcast services, do we have calls in the queue for support?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 257, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 414. Please press *6 to unmute. Once again, caller with the last 3 digits of 414. Please press *6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, Bill Stanley for the record, committee members. I'm here today to testify in favor of AB 257 on behalf of the Southern Nevada Building Trades Union. We are in support of this bill and its apprenticeship opportunities that it develops, and also in support of its qualified workforce that it develops in providing a clean and environment for our children to attend school. During this pandemic, we have been I guess we are more acutely aware of what's going on inside of our classrooms, and we believe that this is the time to fix this problem. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time today.
I'm sorry about that. I was looking at the chat. Do we have any other callers in support?
Caller with the last three digits of 796, please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2
Madam
minutes.
Chairman,
Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, or you may begin.
thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Rusty McAllister, RUSTYMCALLISTER, on behalf of the Nevada State FLCIO and their 150,000 members. We are in support of this legislation also. We believe this is a good policy that puts long overdue maintenance issues to the forefront and takes care of our children. So with that, Madam Chair, I won't take up any more of your time. I agree with the comments made by the previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any other callers in support?
Caller with the last three digits of 577, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Chris Daly, DALY, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. In our history, there have been few more challenging times than the one we find ourselves in right now with the global COVID-19 pandemic. NSEA supports AB 257, addressing one of the most pressing school safety issues of this crisis, indoor air quality. After the closure of all school buildings a year ago, NSEA engaged at the state and local levels so students and educators could do teaching and learning in the safest and most responsible way. This past year, our members responded in a diversity of ways, depending on their district and status of the COVID-19 crisis in their communities. We know some educators have been back at their school buildings, offering in-person instruction since the fall. Others have been in hybrid models, juggling in-person learning with distance learning opportunities. Many others, including in Clark County, have only recently returned to school buildings, spending the bulk of the year working to create meaningful education experiences through full distance learning. However, educators know that distance or hybrid learning models are not ideal for most students and educators. At the same time, educators have also been very concerned about their health and the health and well-being of students. We know prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Nevada's neighborhood public schools were already chronically underfunded with the most crowded classrooms in the country. Meanwhile, many of our school facilities are decades old with failing windows and heating and ventilation, air conditioning, or HVAC systems. That is why it's so important to have strong protocols and social distancing while also doing everything we can to improve the air quality inside our schools. With advocacy from the National Education Association, support from our federal delegation, significant funds have been made available to more safely operate school buildings. This includes funds for facilities, including HVAC systems. Educators understand for these systems to be working at their best, they need to be maintained by technicians who are trained and certified. Effectively addressing the issue of indoor air quality needs to be a component of the safe return to full in-person learning in every district across the state. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits of 142. Please press star 6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alfonso Lopez with Smart Local 88. That's ALFONSOLOPEZ. Through Chairwoman Erin Bilbray Axelrod and to the Education Committee members, I am speaking in support of AB 257. Indoor air quality will be a key potential aspect of creating jobs for Nevada residents. Job creation and opportunity will be critical to getting our state back on track from what this historic pandemic not only did to our state, but to our nation. More importantly, AB 257 is needed since our schools were shut down just over a year ago. Having to adapt to this hybrid online way of learning has proven to be a setback for thousands of Nevada students. Nevada's children want and need to return to a somewhat part of normalcy as soon as it is safe and responsible enough to do so. Indoor air quality will give our teachers, faculty, and students the peace of mind needed to return to the classroom safely. Indoor air quality is becoming a nationwide federally funded effort to give teachers and students the assurance that every option on the table is being looked into or implemented for the safety of everyone involved. Thank you once again for the time and consideration into looking and hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez, and I'd be lying if I said that was the first time that someone called me Aaron instead of Shannon. Pretty much my whole life. Okay, can we take the next caller in support?
Caller with the last three digits of 292, please press star 6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller, you may be muted on your end. Is your phone muted? We cannot hear you.
How about this?
We can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Rob Benner, ROB-BENNER, with the Northern Nevada Building Trades. Carbon dioxide levels in the classroom have direct effects on health, attendance rate, and the learning ability of students. Along with the risk of COVID-19, the need for better air quality standards is critical. We strongly support AB 257. Passage of this bill would dramatically improve the health and success of Nevada's teachers and students, as well as providing high-quality, well-paid jobs for Nevada's workforce. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any other callers in support?
To those callers who have just joined, we are currently on testimony in support of Assembly Bill 257. If you wish to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 257, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 417, please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Jordan Cranebuhl, Jordan, last name Krahenbuhl. I am the Executive Director of the Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors of Nevada. I am speaking in favor of AB 257 as amended. The Uniform Mechanical Code is currently and has been adopted throughout the state of Nevada for many years. The Uniform Mechanical Code is used by government and industry for HVAC installations and indoor air quality throughout the state, including schools. We are in support of the Uniform Mechanical Code and the language that is included in the amendment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any other callers in support?
Caller with the last three digits of 160. Please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mandy Wilkins, MandiWilkins, and I'm representing as the Executive Vice President, the Mechanical Contractors Association of Las Vegas, as well as the the Sheet Metal and Contractors National Association of Southern Nevada. And I know this hearing has run long, so I will be brief. We strongly support AB 257 as amended, and follows the comments there of Mr. Lopez, Mr. Benner, and Mr. Cranebuhl. So thank you for your time, and we definitely urge your support on this important piece of legislation.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other callers in support?
Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers in support on Assembly Bill 257.
Can we move? I'll close testimony in support, and we'll move on to opposition.
To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 257, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, if you wish to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 257, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no callers to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 257.
Thank you, broadcast. I will close testimony in opposition and move to testimony in neutral.
To testify in neutral of Assembly Bill 257, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 023, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair Bilbray Axelrod and committee members. My name is Dr. Brenda Pearson, BRENDA PEARSON, and I am representing the Clark County Education Association. CCEA is testifying in neutral on AB 257. We appreciate the intent of this bill. However, we are incredibly concerned that the cost of the functional ventilation systems will take money away from our students and the resources they need. In the original bill form, the Office of Energy was charged with awarding a grant to a school for purposes of air quality. Under the amendment, each public school will be required to ensure installation and maintenance of adequate ventilation systems to the extent that money is available. The issue is we don't have excess funds for infrastructure in schools in the Clark County School District. Even with the pandemic, some of our classes are 60% over the recommended class size ratios, with children being left without the classroom resources needed to address the learning gaps created over the last year of COVID closures. We cannot support a diversion of funds from our students. Additionally, the new section requiring each local education agency to include a plan for the safe return to in-person instruction is redundant to our current practices, our collective bargaining agreements, which include this information and SB 173. We urge this committee to find a source of funding for this bill separate from our currently designated school funds. Even though the implementation date is July 1st, 2023, it is contingent upon money being available. As we still fight to fund SB 543 optimally, it is very difficult for us to support an additional cost that will not directly benefit our students. That is not to say that ventilation systems and air quality are not important, but we are not in the position where we must put our students. We are in the position that we must put our students and educators first until there is money to utilize for infrastructure costs.
Thank you for your testimony, and I'm going to ask that our committee secretary put your comments in opposition. I think that would be a more appropriate place for your comments, but thank you for the call. Next caller in neutral.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 080, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Brad Keating, BRADKEATING, calling on behalf of the Clark County School District, calling in a neutral capacity on this bill since this is a policy committee. As we told the bill sponsor and presenter earlier this afternoon, all of the school district's ESSER funds that have been discussed during today's presentation have already been accounted for since this federal bill was passed in December of last year. We wanted to bring that to the committee's attention. And we certainly appreciate this bill being discussed today so that we could continue to bring light on the capital improvement needs. Clark County School District currently has $10.8 billion in identified capital needs to build and modernize all of our schools across the valley. Since there are a number of conceptual amendments being provided to the committee today, CCSD is testifying in neutral until a mock-up of the new version is prepared, and we will continue working with the bill sponsor and stakeholders to move this bill. Thanks.
Thank you for your testimony. Any other testimony in neutral?
Caller with the last 3 digits of 411, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lindsay Anderson, LINDSAYANDERSON, on behalf of the Washoe County School District. I'd like to also adopt the comments made by Brad Keating from the Clark County School District. If ultimately the bill requires the air ventilation projects to jump the line in our prioritization system that's based on student safety, we will request that that language be adjusted. We're committed to indoor air quality. We've made major adjustments to prepare to open schools in August that are in compliance with CDC guidelines, especially related to COVID. You may recall we even had to cancel school days because of the wildfire smoke that filled our valley when school opened. So certainly indoor air quality is an important component of student and staff health, and it's currently factored into our prioritization system that's funded by our capital projects fund. So we're looking forward to seeing that clean mock-up to understand what's being mandated of districts. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other calls in neutral?
Caller with the last three digits of 005, please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Bilbrey-Axelrod, Vice Chairwoman Miller, and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Taylor, Jenniffer, Taylor, Taylor, and I'm honored to serve as the Deputy Director for Intergovernmental Relations for the Governor's Office of Energy. GOE would like to offer the following neutral testimony regarding Assembly Bill 257 as introduced. Providing opportunities for Nevada schools to assess and upgrade their HVAC systems to improve air quality and energy efficiency is commendable. While GOE applauds this effort to address this important issue, as introduced, AB 257 creates a significant fiscal impact to the agency and raises questions as to how such a program should be responsibly managed. The referenced impact will be detailed in the significant fiscal note GOE has submitted. GOE understands a conceptual amendment dated today has been proposed, and GOE has just learned of this language. On a first read, GOE will have questions regarding the practicality of this amendment, including, given the funding source, whether GOE could be involved in the implementation of this program as proposed. GOE looks forward to fully evaluating this conceptual amendment and looks forward to the opportunity to speak with the bill sponsor regarding its intent and the expectations for implementation. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this neutral testimony, and I stand available for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony in neutral. Any other testimony in neutral, callers?
Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, there are no more callers to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 257.
Okay, with that, Assemblywoman Martinez, did you want to make some brief closing comments?
Yes, thank you. Just double checking, Mr. Enslow, did you have anything else that you wanted to bring to the table, or are we good?
I think we're good for now. We're happy to talk with any of the commenters that were neutral to try to address their issues as we move forward.
Thank you. And for the record, this is Assemblywoman Susie Martinez, representing District 12. Chair Bilbrey-Axelrod, I can certainly understand you getting confused with your sister. This weekend, I was in an event and everybody kept asking me about my sister. My daughter even mentioned, why does everybody always ask about your sister? You're the Assemblywoman. I'm like, you know what? That's what comes when you have amazing sisters. Anyways, when I first ran, like I mentioned earlier, one of my top priorities was always taking care of our students and our teachers. They are one of the most important things and a priority on my list. So when this bill came to my, when I was able to get possession of this bill, I was very excited because I finally felt like this was my opportunity to finally assist our students and the amazing teachers that take care of them. So committee, thank you for your time. And I just urge you to please support Assembly Bill 257. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, I will close the hearing on AB 257 and open the hearing on AB 367 from our very own Assemblywoman from our Education Committee, Miss Assemblywoman Tolles. So please begin when you are ready.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair, and thanks, Vice Chair, members of this astute Education Committee. I only have about 10 pages worth of opening remarks, so I'll try and read quickly. No, actually, I'll summarize as quickly as I possibly can. For the record, I am Jill Tolles. I represent Assembly District 25, and I am bringing before this committee AB 367. Part of the purpose of education is to prepare our students to enter the world as well-informed citizens and contributors to the community and economy. AB 367 seeks to accomplish two goals. First, it strengthens the commitment to teach critical disciplinary skills in social studies by enshrining them into Nevada Revised Statute. Second, it provides flexibility for teachers and students to have the option to teach American government and economics as a combined course if the district approves on a case-by-case basis. I had 3 guiding principles as I approached this legislation. 1, no heavy lifts, understanding that we are coming out of a year of a global pandemic. 2, no fiscal note. And 3, honor the work that has been done before, particularly by all the supporters of teaching financial literacy through the addition of economics in the social studies subjects, as brought forward by SB 249 in the 2017 session. So I'd like to walk through the bill section by section. There's only 2. It's a very, very short bill, so we should get through it pretty quickly. I'd like to also point out that there is a conceptual amendment that is posted on both Nellis and was hand delivered to your office earlier this morning. So the first portion that I want to talk about is disciplinary skills and adding those to section 1.1E. You'll notice on the conceptual amendment that I've deleted the paragraph E of subsection 1 of NRS 389.018 and instead added it disciplinary skills to subsection 1 of NRS 389.054. That's because I wasn't intending to add an entire new subject to our core contents. Instead, I just wanted to add that disciplinary skills would be included in the instruction in American government. So disciplinary skills provide the manner in which to study the content themes throughout inquiry and disciplinary literacy. They currently reside in our existing content standards, and those existing content standards have also been placed on Nellis for your review and on the Department of Education's website. Specifically, the content standards pertaining to civics education can be found on page 43 for American government and economics. And you can see on page 43, they include critical skills like gathering relevant information from multiple sources representing a wide range of views, evaluating the credibility of a source by examining how experts value the source, seeking multiple media sources when investigating current issues and evaluating the credibility and the reliability of each, and detecting inconsistencies in the evidence. It's these disciplinary skills in and of themselves that are valuable for training up a well-educated citizenry. This simply takes those disciplinary skills and elevates them by codifying them in statute. In short, these skills are critical in an age of rapidly disseminated information, misinformation, and disinformation, channeled through a variety of media and other informational sources for our students to be prepared to enter the world as critical thinking citizens and consumers. The second section of this bill addresses the combined course of American government and economics. This section provides flexibility for teachers and students by removing the limitation that only an AP course can have the option to teach 2 half units, 1 half unit of American government and 1 half unit of economics, and instead allows them, upon approval of the district, to be able to offer that class as a combined course. The benefits of this, first, let me say as a teacher myself, that I believe offering this flexibility where it is needed and desired is beneficial not only to teachers and the students who may learn better through that varied format, but also to the volunteers and the organizations, persons, entities, and businesses who are part of the program to help teach financial literacy, particularly as it's part of this transition to economics. It also gives flexibility to incorporate these concepts throughout the year. So for example, an American government teacher might teach a segment on the formation of the US Treasury and then follow it up with several weeks talking about investments and interest. An American government teacher might prefer to then teach about state and local governments and then follow that up by teaching a economic segment on budgeting and debt. There are a few questions that frequently arise in regards to this proposed change. The first is, will this impact the financial literacy or economics requirements set to be implemented in July of 2022? The answer is no. It is important to note that this would not reduce any of those requirements pertaining to teaching financial literacy, and all other existing requirements will remain in statute and are set for implementation by July 1st, 2022. Another question that I received was, will this impact Infinite Campus or graduation requirements? Again, the answer is no. The same method a district would use to apply the full credit of a combined course offered to an AP class for the purpose of graduation requirements would also work for a non-AP course who utilize this option. And then the third and last question that I'm asked, I've been asked a few times, is will this mandate teachers move to a combined class? And the answer is again, no. I anticipate with all the work over the past years toward implementing this transition to 1/2 unit of American government and 1/2 unit of econ starting in July of 2022, that many, if not most teachers will remain on that track. This merely allows school districts to provide this option if it is desired and appropriate. It's merely permissive language. It may seem like a small change, but to the teachers and students who want the flexibility to weave American government and economics curriculum throughout the whole year, and to the business entities and volunteers who help with that financial literacy program, it makes a big difference. So with that, I'd like to conclude my remarks, and I have Mr. Richard Clark from Washoe County School District here to share his testimony, and then I also have Sarah Brown from Washoe County School District's K-12 Social Studies Facilitator available to help answer questions along with members of the Department of Education. With your permission, Chair, may I pass the baton to Mr. Richard Clark for a very brief 2 minutes he has promised testimony.
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and members of the Education Committee. My name is Richard Clark. I am the Social Studies Department Leader at Reno High School and the We the People teacher. It is my great honor and pleasure to endorse Assembly Bill 367. Thank you, Assemblywoman Jill Tolles, for her guidance and help in this process. In Thomas Jefferson's 1818 report to the Virginia Legislature on the reasons for the University of Virginia, he wrote, "The objects of this primary education would be to understand the duties of the neighbors and country and to discharge with competence the principles and structures of government, the laws which regulate the intercourse of nations, and the spirit of legislation." In a small part, AB 367 will continue Jefferson's philosophy on a well-rounded citizenry. This bill will allow teachers and school districts the ability to professionally determine how to best provide 12th grade civics and economic standards. Over the last 50 years, we have boxed in curriculum. Students often ask, why do we do math and science? Why are we working on writing and history? And why are we talking about policy in environmental science? We are teaching a whole student to understand their duties to their neighbors, to their country, and to discharge with competence the principles of our government. I'm a public radio enthusiast, to say the least, and there's nothing better than to hear the sweet voice of Kai Risdall on APM's Marketplace in the afternoon. I listen to Marketplace to catch up on market news. I listen to APM to catch up on policy news. What Marketplace does so well is what AB 367 would do, allow teachers the ability to wed our financial, economic, and civic standards seamlessly in order for students to see and understand that the subjects aren't separate issues, but are binary stars that orbit each other. I open up my school year each year with a unit, what does it mean to be a citizen? By allowing us to integrate the economic and financial literacy standards with civics, I can open up that unit to not just civic standards, but what does it mean to be a citizen when it comes to their own personal financial responsibility? AB 367 will allow teachers to have the freedom to best implement the standards while allowing us flexibility to teach current events as they happen and their impact on both policy and the economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that testimony. I too am a big Kai Risdall fan, so appreciate that reference. Any other folks who wanted to testify, or are we going to move on to calls? I'm not calls, questions. Oh my gosh. It's been a long day for all of us. Why don't we move on to questions? Do we have questions from the committee? See, I must have anticipated that. So now we will move on to calls and support. VPS, do we have any calls and support?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 367. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in support of Assembly Bill 367, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 023, please press. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair Bill Bray Axelrod and committee members. My name is Dr. Brenda Pearson, BRENDA PEARSON, and I am here representing the Clark County Education Association. CCEA is testifying in support on Assembly Bill 367, and thanks Assemblywoman Tolles for bringing this bill forth. We must ensure that we are engaging all students in high-quality discourse. One component that has not been adequately discussed enough in academics is disciplinary skills. The ability for a student to use disciplinary skills to make claims according to evidence and communicate and critique conclusions is imperative to their future. Creating academic opportunities where disciplinary skills are experienced through content allows students to grapple with real-life experiences. It is the intent that these disciplinary skills will then transfer to how students approach and interact with the world around them. We must ensure that every student has every possible tool in their tool belt to approach their education with an open mind to become the innovators of tomorrow. We thank Assemblywoman Tolles for spearheading this movement towards a more holistic education for all students. Thank you.
Thank you for the call, the testimony and support. BPS, do we have another caller in support?
Caller with the last 3 digits of 811, please press star 6 to unmute. Once again, caller with the last 3 digits of 811, please press star 6 to unmute. You will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record, and you may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Shelley Williamson. It's spelled SHELLY WILLIAMSON. For a little background, I teach at Reed High School in Washoe County. I've been teaching government and AP government for 20 years. At the beginning of my career, as part of a pilot program to increase economic education in this district, and I'm currently serving on the district committee responsible for designing economics curriculum for Washoe County high schools. In other words, I guess I just want to say that I fully support incorporating both of these social studies disciplines into the 12th grade curriculum. And I am speaking quite specifically to the second part of this bill. I'm in favor of this bipartisan bill and the flexibility it provides for educators to commingle these two strands as they deem most effective. Many of the economic standards can be taught through a government lens and vice versa. Teachers should have discretion to separate these or present them in a more interdisciplinary manner. You may find it interesting to note that Washoe County School District teachers were surveyed regarding which of the economic standards they considered to be the most essential or the most critical, and 2 of the top 3 were standards that directly related to the teaching of government. For example, the standard rated as most essential is to evaluate the effectiveness of government policies on the U.S. economy. Many educators might find their instruction to be most effective when they are able to teach the relationship between government and the economy throughout their study of government rather than referring back to it in a separate semester. If we separate these into 2 separate semesters, teachers will not have the choice to use their professional judgment to determine how best to help their students master these standards. A teacher who wishes to provide instruction on global economics during their international relations unit should have that option. Given how the bill is currently written, teachers would have the opportunity to present these concurrently. It's important to note this bill does not take away the opportunity for teachers who do not wish to separate the subjects. Thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you for the call and support. Appreciate it. Any other calls in support?
Testify in support on Assembly Bill 367. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, we have no more callers to testify in support of Assembly Bill 367.
Okay, so we will move on to calls in opposition.
To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 367, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 367, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, we have no callers to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 367.
Okay, we will close testimony in opposition and move to testimony in the neutral position.
To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 367, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in the neutral position on Bill 367, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, at this time, the line is open and working. However, we have no callers to testify in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 367.
Okay, I will close testimony in neutral on AB 367. Assemblywoman Toles, did you want to make any closing remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to leave with this final quote from Thomas Jefferson: "Educated citizenry is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people." Thank you for hearing this bill, and I would ask for your support respectfully.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. I thought for sure you were going to quote Kai Risdall, but Jefferson's a good second choice. Thank you. Okay, so we'll close the hearing on AB 367, and our last agenda item is public comment. Before we go to public comment, I'd like to remind those that are going to be calling in, this is an opportunity to discuss general matters that fall within the purview of this committee, not to rehear bills. So remember, you have 2 minutes, state and spell your name, and let's go ahead, broadcast services.
To join the queue to give public comment, please press star 9 now. If you would like to make public comment today, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. One last time, if there is anyone who has just joined us, please press star 9 now if you wish to give public comment at this time. Chair, at this time the line is open and working. However, we have no callers in this time for public comment.
Okay, thank you very much, BPS, and thanks for your hard work today. Any other comments from committee members before we adjourn? Okay, and I'm just gonna, I think most of you know, next week, just plan, we are going to have 2 committee meetings, both on Tuesday and Thursday. So we'll have a 1 o'clock and a 6 o'clock on both of those days, as we are trying to get through all the bills that we can. And we will be starting our Thursday committee at 1 p.m. So our next meeting will be Thursday, April 1st, April Fool's Day. It's not an April Fool's though. So be there at 1 p.m. And this concludes our meeting for today. Meeting is adjourned.